Chapter 1472. Jean Moping and the others did not want to argue with the guardian elder, so they brought Su Weining and Yun Jiang to the side hall. However, they found that there was already someone waiting there. They went up to talk to that person, who, like them, was also from one of the 12 powers. Due to the same reason, they were temporarily trapped here. Yun Jiang asked telepathically, "Fellow Taoist Jean, could this be Elder Hang's trick?" Jean Moping was no longer flustered. He looked outside and saw that no one was watching them. He replied telepathically, "Fellow Taoist Jean Mang, don't worry. Every guardian cultivator has nothing to do with each other. Elder Hang's reach is not that far. Also, there is a Guanbi in the hall. Anything that happens will be seen by the perfected ones in the Azure world. There are so many people here, no one would dare to be so presumptuous." Sima Quan had been following beside the three. He pondered for a while. To be able to give such a command in the realm guarding hall, that person should be from the Azure world. He did not know if they were here to look for him or to search for demons. However, he had the bronze mask passed down by ancestral master Ling Yu. He was confident that he could avoid detection, so there was no need to panic. They stayed here for 2 days. After Jean Moping, a few more people entered the side hall. It seemed that they were all heading to Pingshan realm to kill demons. However, Sima Quan noticed a frail-looking youth dressed in a gray robe. This person gave him a strange feeling. He said, "Perfected Yun, there is something strange about that person in the gray robe. We need to be careful later." Yun Jiang replied, "Thank you, Perfected Yun, for the reminder." He did not tell Jean Moping about this. If the latter found out, he would inevitably reveal a flaw. If he attracted this person's attention, it would be self-defeating. One day later, a magnificent pillar of light descended from outside the hall, and 3 people walked out. Judging from their aura, each of them had cultivated a nascent soul dharma body. The one in the lead was a middle-aged Taoist with a stocky and heavy body. The guardian elder came forward and bowed. "By long welcomes the messenger of the Azure world. Please come in." The middle-aged Taoist nodded at him and entered the main hall. He looked around at the bronze statues by the side of the platform and said sternly, "There is no need for pleasantries. Summon everyone here." The guardian elder gave an order, and a palace attendant entered and called out everyone, including Jean Moping. He said, "Envoy, everyone is here." The middle-aged Taoist looked around and raised his hand. The 2 people behind him lit up a joss stick. Not long after, a strange aroma spread in all directions. At the same time, a cloud of mist surged out. Not long after, it spread to the entire hall. Everyone instantly felt as if their bodies had fallen into a sticky swamp, and because they didn't know what these envoys wanted to do, they became slightly uneasy. The middle-aged Taoist said in a calm voice, "Don't panic. This cloud won't hurt anyone. It's just to prevent demons from sneaking in and hurting people." Only then did everyone relax a little. The middle-aged Taoist took out a mirror and shone it at the crowd. No expression could be seen on his face. After a moment, his gaze landed on a cultivator and he asked, "Where do you cultivate?" That cultivator didn't know what to do. He answered while trembling, "I am a disciple of 5-Color Mountain, Chiu Guang. I cultivate under Elder Wu." The middle-aged Taoist said, "You can leave first, but you still need to train your courage. Otherwise, how will you subdue demons in Pingshan Jie?" The guardian elder waved his hand and had the palace attendant make way for them. He said, "Let's go." "Yes, yes." Seeing that he was fine, that cultivator was overjoyed. He bowed to the middle-aged Taoist and guardian elder, then hurriedly left the side hall and stepped into the realm gate above. This place gave him a lot of pressure. He would rather face demons than stay here any longer. The middle-aged Taoist came down and said to another person, "You can leave too." That person also hurriedly left the hall as if he had received an imperial edict. As everyone left, there were fewer and fewer people left in the main hall. Soon, only the handsome youth and Jean Moping's group were left. The middle-aged Taoist looked at the handsome youth. His two companions behind him seemed to know what he wanted, so they walked up and surrounded him. The handsome youth was startled. "Envoy, what is the meaning of this?" The middle-aged Taoist said, "Just surrender. Do you still want to hide before my mirror shines?" The handsome youth was even more confused. At the same time, he was a little angry. He said, Why do you say that?" The middle-aged Taoist did not waste any more words with him. He said, "Do you think I'm just bluffing? You're just a light monster. Who gave you the guts to be here?" He waved his hand and ordered, "Capture him." As he shouted, several spiritual rings flew out from him and his two companions, trapping the handsome youth tightly. The latter did not resist at all. Instead, he looked at the wronged expression he had just now and revealed an expression of surprise. He said, "I have never revealed any flaws. How did you see through me?" The middle-aged Taoist did not answer. He nodded to his two companions and made a hand seal at the same time. Wind and fire appeared on the ground. It started burning from the feet of the handsome youth and quickly spread to his body. Seeing this, the middle-aged Taoist did not relax at all. He stared at the fire. They knew that a monster from the outer world would not only have this little ability. The guardian elder held the talisman in his hand tightly. The bronze statues in the main hall were not just for show. In times of crisis, they could also be used to fight the enemy. The handsome youth was quickly burned until only his head was left. However, he did not die. He sneered. "Very good. Today, you destroyed one of my avatars. I'll owe you for now. In the future, when my clan enters the outer world, I'll personally get it back from you." The moment he finished speaking, there was a loud bang. The fire rose several feet high and the last bit of the person disappeared in the fire. The middle-aged Taoist was not happy. Instead, he revealed a look of worry. He ordered the people beside him, "The light monster has appeared. Do not underestimate it. Go and report this to the Azure world." Sima Quan looked at the charred area on the ground and became vigilant. He thought to himself, so they really came for the demon from the outer world. I have never seen these evil creatures before. Since they can invade the Yun Shu realm, they can also invade other realms. I need to report this to the inner world. The middle-aged Taoist turned around and looked at Jean Moping and the others. He said in a low voice, "Now it's your turn." Jean Moping was very frightened. He bowed and said, "Emissary, please allow me to report. We are not demons." The middle-aged Taoist said, "I know you are not demons, but let me ask you, what is the deal with the demon whale beside you?" Jean Moping quickly said, "It is a companion that has signed a contract with me." The middle-aged Taoist said, "A demon whale that is comparable to a Yuanian cultivator is willing to sign a contract with a core formation disciple like you. Can you tell me why?" Jean Moping naturally could not tell the truth. He braced himself and said, "When I found the demon whale, it was in a deep sleep for a long time. Its body was weak and it was heavily injured. I helped it solve the problem, so it was willing to join you." The middle-aged Taoist scrutinized Yunjiang and said, "Now that the demons and evil have invaded the realm, the origin of your guardian beast is a little suspicious. Why don't you stay here for a few more days and wait for me to investigate? If there are no problems, I will let you go." Yunjiang thought that the middle-aged Taoist had found out that there was a problem with her and could not help but be on guard. Sima Quan said, "There is no need to panic. This person has no killing intent. Moreover, with me here, even if you suffer a bit, you will not lose your life." Jean Moping did not have the strength to resist. He hesitated and said, "Fellow Taoist Jean Mang, what do you think?" Yunjiang said, "Waiting a few days is good. With Sima Quan's help, if things really got out of hand, he could fly away and return to the Mountain Sea realm." Jean Moping and the others waited uneasily for 3 days. Finally, there was a result of the investigation. The middle-aged Taoist compared it with the records and found that what Jean Moping had said was basically true. He also confirmed that there was no qi of the evil on Yunjiang. Thus, he did not stay here any longer and left with the other two. Jean moping watched them leave and relaxed. He felt that this trip had been really thrilling. He said, "We can leave this place now." Su Weiniang had a look of lingering fear. She asked worriedly, "Senior brother, is the realm about to be invaded by demons?" Jean moping comforted her. "With the perfected ones of the Azure world here, how could anything happen? Junior sister is thinking too much." The group walked quickly to the realm gate. He took out his talisman and when a spiritual light enveloped him, he stepped into the realm. Su Weiniang and Yunjiang followed him in. The scenery in front of them blurred and they found themselves standing in an unfamiliar realm. The land here was vast and the plains were either covered with gravel or half-buried skeletons of giant beasts. Jean moping heaved a sigh of relief. "We've finally reached the Pingshan realm." At this time, Yunjiang said, "Fellow Taoist, you need to calm yourself down as soon as possible. The situation here is unclear, and it might not be a good thing if you encounter another enemy. The two of you can rest here for a while, I'm going to patrol around." Jean moping said gratefully, "Thank you, fellow Taoist." Yunjiang turned into a cloud of smoke and flew away. First, she circled the area and walked for dozens of miles. Finally, she landed in a valley and transformed back into her human form. She used her mana to open up a cave abode on the mountain wall. She then walked in and asked in a low voice, "Is Jinren Sima around?" After a while, a gust of chilly wind drifted around him. Then, an indistinct silhouette with an unidentifiable face appeared. He took out the dual realm dial from his sleeve and held it in front of him, saying, "This dial has never been used before. Jinren Yun, please receive it." Yunjiang received it solemnly and said, "I will report this matter to the sect." Sima Quan said, "I will look after the surroundings. Jinren Yun can act without worry." Yunjiang agreed and placed the two realms dial on a flat mountain rock. He reached out and pressed on it. A spiritual light rushed up and after a while, Mengzhen's figure appeared in the light. He bowed and said, "Disciple Yunjiang greets Mengzhen." Mengzhen looked at him for a while and said in a low voice, "Yunjiang, there was no news of you after you entered the realm. Now that you are fine, I believe Jinren Wei will be happy to know." Yunjiang lowered his head and said in shame, "I shouldn't have worried you, teacher. It's just that the Yunshu realm is full of obstacles and countless restrictions. I couldn't find a chance in all these years. If it wasn't for Jinren Sima's arrival, I'm afraid I wouldn't be able to send a message to the realm until now." Mengzhen heard this and his expression turned slightly serious. He said, "What is it like in the Yunshu realm? Tell me in detail." Chapter 1473. A Genius in a Second. Remember Love Go. Novel Network, to provide you with exciting novel reading. Yunshu Realm, within the Azure Realm, the earth surged and the sky was high. It was still a desolate scene. Among the 12 powers of the White Realm, once someone reached the Elephant Realm, they would come here to continue cultivating. But at the same time, they would have to face the demons of the Crimson Realm that could charge into the realm at any time. The Azure Realm and the Purple Realm were closely connected and contained more than 60% of the spiritual opportunity in this realm. 30% was taken by the demons, and the remaining 10% belonged to the White Realm. The cultivators here all liked to hide their abodes in the sky and let them drift with the clear air. But today, the 4 abodes of the upper true level were all gathered in one place. There were only 5 cultivators of the mortal metamorphosis realm in the Yunshu realm. Other than the one with the highest cultivation who was guarding the ritual implement in the Purple Realm, the other 4 were all here. The 4 were similar in cultivation, and there was no difference between them, so they each took a position. Sitting on the east side was Yujirue, the dock master of Shinshio Dock. He had a black beard, a jade-like face, and eyebrows like smoke. He said, "Someone sent a message saying that a Een Glow monster's clone was found in the realm. Fellow Taoists must have heard of it." Een Liang, the sect master of the virtuous perching water veranda, had a look of displeasure on his face. The Een Radiance demons were the most proficient in searching for the outside world. Normally, as long as one Yin Radiance demon entered the realm, it meant that the entire demonic race would arrive sooner or later. He rebuked, I don't understand. The Pingshan realm has always been peaceful for tens of thousands of years. How did the Great Might Heavenly Palace manage to sneak in when it was their turn to guard it? The person sitting on the south side looked to be in his 50s, but he was muscular and had dark hair. His eyes were deep. This was Ming Xianling, the lord of the Great Might Heavenly Palace. He said slowly, compared to the past, there are no loopholes. What's more, the 12 families guard the realm pass together, so the demon could have snuck in from somewhere else. How can fellow Taoist be so sure that this happened under the Great Might Heavenly Palace? However, Yin Liang didn't let him go and said, how could it have come from somewhere else? That evil demon clearly came from Pingshan realm. Ming Xianling said slowly, then fellow Taoist should be asking that person why they let the demon in. Yin Liang still wanted to say something, but at this time, an ethereal voice interrupted, this matter has nothing to do with the Great Might Heavenly Palace. The three of them looked over. There was only a ball of crystal mist on top of it. It did not take on a human form. It was the leader of Fairy Mountain, Yin Xian. After Chi Path cultivators obtained Dharma bodies, they could manifest all kinds of forms, but usually, only the human form was the most suitable for cultivation. However, she was different from the rest because of her special technique. This sex power wasn't that great, it couldn't even compare to the sex behind the three of them. However, the Tao companion of the previous Mountain Lord was the only one currently cultivating in the Purple Realm. Therefore, the three sects were extremely polite to her. Yin Liang asked, Mountain Chieftain Yin said that this has nothing to do with the Great Might Heavenly Palace. Why is that? Yin Xian pointed up and said, it was done by that person. The three of them were all shocked. Yin Mu said, everyone, do you remember that whenever there is a lack of spirit opportunity in the inner realm, that person will open the door and try to lure the beings of the outer realm here. If they can find out where their inner realm is, then we can find it and take it over. Don't forget, once the door is opened, we can go out, but it also gives the demon a chance to come in. The three of them frowned. How many years had it been? This person had always been out of their control. He had even tied down the person with the highest cultivation among them, unable to extricate himself. Now, he had brought them such a huge problem. Yujirue sighed and said, this demon has chased us for tens of thousands of years. Now, it has found its way here. Compared to 10,000 years ago, our strength hasn't increased much. How can we be her opponent? Back then, the void realm they were in was invaded by demons and the 5 of them brought their disciples to escape. However, they did not expect to obtain a fortuitous encounter and be summoned to this place by that person. Dozens of lower realms appeared out of thin air, and the strength of the sect expanded by more than 10 times. However, that was all. Logically speaking, the sects had their own methods of inheritance and such a large amount of spirit opportunity. After 10,000 years of development, there should be a few more seats here. However, because that person needed to take most of the spirit opportunity, there was not much that they could really enjoy. Therefore, after 10,000 years, the battle strength of the upper echelons did not change at all. It was without a doubt impossible to fight against the demon with their current strength. At most, they could escape. However, they had lived in peace for 10,000 years, and no one wanted to escape again. Yin Liang's face was gloomy. He said, does anyone have a good plan to repel the enemy? Yujirue stroked his beard and said, if that person is willing to help, there will be no problem. Ming Xianling said, to that person, it doesn't matter who stays in this realm. As long as they can help him search for spirit opportunity, it will be fine. He will not help us. Maybe those demons are more to his liking. Yin Liang scoffed, obviously dissatisfied with this. However, he did not refute, knowing that it was the truth. Yujirue said, I wonder if there is a way in Fairy Mountain. Wan and Yin both looked at Yin Mo. On the surface, they were asking about Fairy Mountain, but in reality, they were asking about the person who was hiding in the Purple Realm. Yin Mo said, I do have an idea, but I'm afraid the three of you are not willing. Yujirue said, why don't you tell us? It won't be worse than now. Yin Xian said calmly, ask for help from other realms. Yin Liang was startled, but he did not reject it immediately. Instead, he asked, that person found another outer realm? Yin Mo said, not yet. It's just that a few days ago, the Great Might Heavenly Palace caught 2 disciples who were possessed by external demons. Ming Xianling said, let me tell you about this embarrassing matter. After these 2 disciples were possessed by external demons, their actions were normal. No one saw anything wrong. However, a few days ago, the spirit mirror emissary who was sent to search for demons took a look at the 2 of them according to the usual practice. At that time, they noticed something strange. Yujirue said, is it because of those demons? Yin Mo said, not the same way. Those methods are very sinister, but they should be the work of a cultivator. Yujirue sighed and said, to be able to sneak into our realm without being detected by the restrictions set by that person, it is enough to show that the background behind them is not simple. Yin Liang said, they may not be comparable to the demons. Yujirue also admitted it. With a slightly complicated expression, he said, yes, they may not be comparable to those demons. They could infer from the actions of the other party that even if the power behind the person who sneaked in was stronger than them, the difference would not be too great. If there was an almighty existence that surpassed them, then there would be no need to investigate at all. They could just directly kill their way in. Yin Liang said, if we can rope this person in to fight the demons with us, that would be the best. But why would these cultivators from beyond the heavens help us? If they were in their position, wouldn't it be better to watch me and the demons fight to the point where both sides are injured? Ming Xianling said, this is the crux of the matter. Therefore, we should take the initiative to release some information so that they can make the right choice. We must let them understand that if they are not willing to help us, then when this place is occupied by the demons, they will not be able to get anything. Yujirue thought about it and said, we can give it a try. At worst, they will just ignore it. He turned his head and said, fellow Taoist, what do you think? Yin Liang coldly said, I just hope we are not leading a wolf into the house. Ming Xianling disagreed. What wolf into the house? Once the demons came, they might not even be able to protect the Yunshu realm. If there were really cultivators from beyond the heavens interfering, they might be able to divert the disaster. At this moment, in the mountain and sea realm, Meng Zhen had also received news from Yunjiang and Sima Quan. He had a general understanding of the situation in the Yunshu realm. He immediately reported this matter to the sect master and asked for instructions on how to deal with the Yunshu realm. After sect master Qin considered it, he sent out a divine will to invite the various enlightened masters. Almost at the same time, the enlightened masters of the inner realm all felt something and released their divine wills. However, a moment later, they all landed in that mysterious space. After everyone greeted each other, Meng Zhen stood up and explained the matter of the Yunshu realm in detail. When Zhang Yan heard about the broken boundary, he revealed a pondering look and said, during the human tribulation back then, the Jade Firmament sect used the space-breaking and world-chiseling technique to divide the 9 continents into the void, which is similar to the broken boundary. Ing Chuanxiu said, however, that is only a mysterious technique that can only be used with the help of the Jade Cliff sect. It can't last long, but the Yunshu realm can last for tens of thousands of years. If it wasn't for a powerful cultivator, it could also be a magical treasure. Xue Dingyuan said, with such a division, the powerful cultivators will live where the spiritual opportunity is, while the weak cultivators will stay where they are weak. There is some truth to this. Zhang Yan smiled and said, I'm afraid this is not only to seize the spiritual opportunity, but also to guard against the powerful cultivators from beyond the heavens. With this division, even if there is a battle in the inner realm, it will only harm one place and not the other realms. Even if one place is destroyed, the spiritual opportunity can be transferred to another broken realm. The enlightened masters all nodded in agreement. Meng Zhen asked, how do enlightened masters think we should treat the people of this realm? Ing Chuanqiu said, I think that since the Yunshu realm has an owner and has no conflict with me, we can ignore it. However, the outer realm is difficult to find and we can't give it up easily. The Jiaohua realm originally belonged to the Cloud Whale tribe. Now that the Cloud Whale tribe has formed an alliance with us, the 9 continents should ask for this place back for them. We also want the people of Yunshu realm to steal the spiritual opportunity from it. The original owner of the Jiaohua realm was the Cloud Whale tribe. If the 9 continents used this as an excuse, they would have the right to stand. Xue Dingyuan also said, the matter of the Jiaohua realm has to be solved, but the people of Yunshu realm seem to be afraid of the evil. We need to ask enlightened Master Sima to find out where they came from and how strong they are. Before we figure it out, we can wait and see. Zhang Yan thought for a while and said, this realm and the evil have nothing to do with me now, but that may not be the case in the future. Fortunately, they are in the light and I am in the dark. We can first strengthen ourselves and slowly wait for the right time. Now time was on their side. Not to mention other things, after a period of time, when he refined the treasure that stabilized the realm or cut his past body and reached the second realm, his fighting ability would be greatly improved. Chapter 1474. A brilliant, multicolored light spread out from the void, like a resplendent belt of stars. This was the Tao of formation that the Qinsang school had set up here. To be more precise, this place was built by the disciples of the Xianyuan division alone, and did not take up any of the sect's resources. At this moment, the Tao of formation flickered with brilliant light, and a vortex appeared. It looked like it was sinking, and the people guarding the place could tell at a glance that someone was coming from the other side. After a while, a palace emerged from within. Within the cabin, Yuan Jianqing held a Go stick in his hand, and faced a pool that was about 30 meters wide. He was playing, Seeking the Tao, with Zhang Chan. This game of Go was originally very popular among the cultivators of the Junchen realm. Now that the people of the Junchen realm had pledged allegiance to them, this game of Go also spread to the mountain and sea realm. Because they saw the benefits of playing Go, the various sects of the 9 continents quickly adopted it, and it quickly spread. Zhang Chan thought hard for a while, and suddenly his eyes lit up. He moved the Go stick, and the Go in front of him suddenly changed. Not only did it seem to come to life, but it also seemed to swallow up the wind and clouds. Yuan Jianqing nodded. This is a good move. Once the fish becomes a dragon, it flies to the sky, the rivers and the seas follow. Clear air washes away the fishy scales, and only one's body rises to the sky. Junior brother Chan's move this time is like a rainbow, as graceful as a dragon. The wind and clouds really change. Before this momentum of yours dissipates, I can only retreat. Zhang Chan chuckled, and then threw the Go stick away. This is as far as I can go. If I go any further, I won't be a match for Reverend Yuan. Seeking the way of chess. Playing chess was also seeking the way. It contained the various comprehensions he had on his path of cultivation. The path he had taken before was practically the various experiences he had on his path of cultivation. When he reached that step just now, he had leaped up and soared above the clouds. This had already evolved to his own limit. If he continued, he would have to use his current strength as a foundation to carve out a new path. However, Yuan Jingqing, his opponent, would be constantly obstructing him, causing countless changes. Thus, it was not as easy as truly seeking Tao. In fact, if he could make it through the game of chess, as long as his luck was not too bad, he would most likely be able to achieve something. Yuan Jianqing looked outside. Are we reaching the Scarlet Earth Star? There is still half a month left, said Yuan Jianqing. Please forgive me, Reverend Yuan. There are some demons that can come into the void. If we build the formation too close, we might be destroyed. Since there is still half a month left, why not continue? Asked Yuan Jianqing. Zhang Chan chuckled and said, there's no need for Jinren to watch me make a fool of myself. My future path is unclear, but I can't go down anymore. Yuan Jingqing said calmly, since you're from the mystic origin sect, how can you be afraid before the battle? Reverend Yuan Jianqing, don't look down on me. I'm not afraid of you, said Yuan Jianqing. With a wave of his hand, the chess stick flew back into his hand. It's just a game of chess. What's there to talk about? At this moment, the chess pieces in the pond floated along with the water. Another change was happening. Yuan Jianqing saw the opportunity and pushed the chess stick. After the carp leaping over the dragon's gate, it was not as good as just now. With Yuan Jingqing's push, the chess pieces fell even faster. Zhang Chan panicked. If he did not do anything, he would lose in less than half a month. He could not care less. He pushed the chess stick and turned the chess pieces around. How could Yuan Jianqing let him succeed so easily? He moved another chess piece. This time, it was aggressive. It was as if he wanted to cut off the dragon's head, pull out the dragon's tendons, and break the dragon's bones. Zhang Chan was even more nervous. He tried to salvage the situation. This game of chess was equivalent to an evolution of one's own path towards the Tao. So long as one didn't want one's Tao to be severed, then one would always try their best to obtain victory. Thus, the end of this game of chess was usually equivalent to a battle with one's peers, and one's spirit, energy, and essence would be greatly exhausted. Both sides of the chess game were killing each other. Half a month had passed unknowingly. Yuan Jianqing paused and looked outside. He saw a huge planet that was emitting red light. He kept the chess stick and passed it to Yuan Ping, who was standing at the side. Let's stop here, he said. Zhang Chan was still thinking about the game of chess just now. He looked up and said, Reverend Yuan, I have to thank you. Yuan Jianqing said, You don't have to thank me. It's not up to me to decide how far junior brother Chan can go. This is your own Tao. You and I were just playing a game of chess. Zhang Chan laughed and said, Not bad, not bad. Reverend Yuan also gained something. Yuan Jianqing agreed, indeed. Zhang Chan also shifted his gaze to the outside, pointed, and said, Jinren Yuan, you must have seen it. This is the red scorching earth star. Ferocious demons are everywhere, and there are monsters everywhere. My insects can roam freely in other places, but they can't be used here. Not to mention the land, they can't even cross the red light. However, there must be a treasure hidden here, otherwise, how could there be such a strange aura? Yuan Jianqing said, I'm here to solve this problem. Zhang Chan said, then I'll go back and sleep first. I'll come back to call you when I'm full of energy. Yuan Jianqing also nodded. The two of them played a game of chess. Although they both benefited from it, the consumption was not small. It was impossible for them to go down at this time. They both returned to their cave residences to adjust their breath, to recover their vitality. 5 days later, 2 rays of conveyance light flew out of the palace and flew towards the huge planet in front of them. Soon, they disappeared into the red light one after another. As Yuan Jianqing approached, he felt a burning sensation surging up his body. It seemed to be because of the red light. He had heard about this situation from Zhang Chan earlier. He used his mana and forced it back a little. After about an hour, the two of them finally passed through the red light and saw the planet beneath their feet. The strange thing was that although the outside looked like it was dyed in blood, the bottom looked like a beautiful landscape. The spiritual vigor was also abundant. Zhang Chan laughed and said, Reverend Yuan, don't look at the beautiful scenery below. The living creatures here are very cruel. Look over there, they have sensed our qi and are coming over. Yuan Jianqing turned around and saw densely packed black spots coming over. They were monsters that looked like goats with a horn on their head and a pair of wings on their back. Zhang Chan smacked his lips and said, Reverend Yuan, you don't know this. The flying goats have delicious meat. I can't forget it after eating it once. Demonic insects like him usually absorbed the blood essence of their prey. They were not essential to the flesh. However, the demons here were unusually delicious for him. Yuan Jianqing suddenly asked, Is this monster especially delicious, or are all monsters like this? Zhang Chan thought for a while and said, I don't know if all monsters are like this, but at least the ones that I've eaten make my mouth water when I think about them. Yuan Jianqing said, then there must be something hidden in the flesh of this monster that made you so obsessed with it. Zhang Chan did not think about this at first, but after this reminder, he came to a realization and said, that makes sense. There is an unusual qi dynamic hidden in the flesh. It must be this thing that attracted me. Yuan Jianqing said, since there's nothing else but here, maybe the abnormality of this planet has something to do with it. He opened his hand and several spiritual shuttles flew out and entered the bodies of the strange beasts. The beasts fell from the sky one by one. After that, he released a stream of mana and captured the strange beast that looked like the leader. After checking it, he realized that there was a strange spiritual vigor hidden in the flesh. How could he sense the existence of this thing? However, no matter how he looked, he could not find it. It was very strange. However, it was not a big deal. The living creatures on this planet would not change for no reason. There must be a reason for it. As long as he found the reason, he could solve the mystery. Zhang Chan took advantage of this moment and went up to eat to her heart's content. Only then did she return satisfied. However, after a short delay, a large group of monsters of different appearances flew over. Yuan Jianqing was not in the mood to get entangled with these beasts. He kept his qi dynamic and felt that he needed a place to stay. He said, Junior brother Chan said that you set up a cave abode here. I wonder where it is. Zhang Chan said, follow me, Jinren. As he said this, he dived down to the ground. Yuan Jianqing also cast a conveyance light and followed. The two of them traveled for a day and landed on a desolate island. At the top of the sea cliff, they could see a cave abode. Zhang Chan said, initially, I set up the cave abode on land and put down formation flags. However, the beasts and demonic insects here sensed the qi dynamic and came over. Moreover, they were not afraid of death. After a few days, it was destroyed. Even if I placed it underground, it would not work. Later, I placed it in the sky, but there were countless ferocious birds in the sky. I could only place it on the sea. Yuan Jianqing said, there is more seawater here than on land. Could it be that there are no ferocious beasts here? Zhang Chan said, that's not the case. It's just that the greater demons in the sea are huge, and their preferences are different from those on land. My restrictive spell is only to conceal the qi dynamic and is not an offensive or defensive spell formation. Furthermore, the island is barren and does not have any vegetation. In their eyes, it is nothing more than a few broken rocks. They would not care about it. Yuan Jianqing landed and sensed that there was a demonic fish that was comparable to a great saint of the mountain and sea realm. However, it was not moving at all. Zhang Chan said, it's a good thing that such a big fish is here. It sees this place as its own territory. When the demons from the outside come, it will fight them. Yuan Jianqing followed him into the immortal's cave. He found that it was decorated very well. There was a thick blanket under his feet, which was completely white. The walls of the cave were inlaid with rows of pearls the size of longans. There was also a prayer mat, an incense burner, a table, and a few pavilions. Everything was complete, and there was even a pond of tranquil water. Zhang Chan pushed open the stone door to reveal an inner chamber. He said, I have killed and eaten the ferocious beasts, and the rest have been injected with medicinal pills to put them to sleep. There are more than 200 of them here. I was planning to bring them back to the sect and offer them to the master. If you are interested, Reverend Yuan, you can wake them up and take a look. Yuan Jianqing nodded and said, that saves me a lot of effort. He walked in and looked up. Zhang Chan had hollowed out the belly of the mountain and made it look like a beehive. In every cave, there was a slumbering demon. Zhang Chan followed him in and said proudly, I spent years searching for these. What do you think, Reverend Yuan? Most of the powerful demons on this continent are here, except for a few that I don't dare to provoke. Yuan Jianqing looked at it and said, since junior brother Chan has prepared these for master, it won't be complete without a few types of demons. After I look around, I will go with you and capture them. Zhang Chan said happily, good, good. With Reverend Yuan's help, we will definitely be able to capture them easily. Chapter 1475. Yuan Jianqing stayed on the red scorching earth star for 3 years. During this period, he and Zhang Chan worked together and killed countless poisonous insects and ferocious demons, greatly enriching the treasury on the island. However, there was a strange thing. All the creatures born in this place, regardless of their size, seemed to be stained with that strange thing. This was not the only strange thing. This was clearly just an earth star. Perhaps the size was slightly larger, but it was not to such an exaggerated extent. However, there were endless powerful demons, and there were many that were comparable to demon saints. Fortunately, the two of them had not met the likes of the demon ancestors so far. But thinking about it, it made sense. Only the boundless mountains, seas, and land could support such a great demon. Otherwise, with just a slight movement from this demon, it could cause the entire planet to collapse. On the plains, the body of a huge beast slowly collapsed, like a collapsing mountain range, shaking the earth. Blood flowed like a river, flowing in all directions. The smell of blood spread for dozens of miles, causing countless demonic birds in the sky to scream and swoop down. Zhang Chan said loudly, Jinren Yuan, this group of beasts is here to steal our food again. Thank you for your help. Yuan Jianqing waved his hand and a cloud appeared in the sky. All the demon birds entered it and immediately became dizzy. They kept spinning inside and could not come out at all. After fighting with demons for a few years, he became more and more proficient in controlling his mana. He could easily confuse the senses of these demons. Zhang Chan, on the other hand, stepped forward and inhaled. He drew out a wisp of blood light from the demon corpse and swallowed it. After a short while, the profound qi in his body grew a little stronger. His face was flushed red, and he said, although the demons here are fierce, their blood qi is really rich. It's like a great tonic. Yuan Jingqing looked up at the sky. The ferocious birds were unable to approach their target for a long time, and they actually started to tear at each other. Broken feathers and limbs kept falling from the sky. With a wave of his sleeve, a strong gust of wind blew them away, and he said, but we still haven't found the cause of the abnormality. The spiritual opportunity here was abundant, and it would be a pity if they did not make use of it. Furthermore, the array formation had already been built here, and they could not just let it go to waste. However, if they did not find out the reason, it would be difficult for them to establish a foothold here. Zhang Chan patted his belly and said, don't worry, spiritual master Jing. I've devoured a lot of monsters recently, so I can vaguely sense something. I believe that I'll be able to find out the truth after I devour a few more monsters. Yuan Jianqing said, as long as junior brother Chan is confident, it's fine. It's just killing a few more demons. Zhang Chan rolled his eyes and said, my strength has increased a little, I can try to capture that long-eared monster now. Yuan Jianqing said, that monster is not simple. It seems to have intelligence. We should capture it and examine it. The monster they were talking about was a long-eared monster. Although its body was not big, it could fly up into the sky, dive into the ground, and swim in the water. Moreover, its recovery ability was impressive, and its injuries were healed in the blink of an eye. Not only that, ever since the two of them arrived on Earth Star, it was the first time that they encountered a monster that knew how to escape if they could not defeat it. Therefore, they did not guard against it, and it escaped into the sea. Fortunately, there seemed to be something in that area that it could not bear to part with. Therefore, it returned not long after. The two of them were thinking that they might be able to uncover some secrets from it. After discussing it earlier, they felt that they were not completely confident in capturing it, so they did not bother with it anymore. Now that their skills had improved a lot, they could try to capture it. The two of them left the monster's corpse there and returned to the cave abode on the sea. After resting for a few days, they headed towards the place where the long-eared monster was. They did not travel on land, but took a big detour and took a detour from the sea. This way, they could prevent the monster from escaping into the sea again. Half a day later, the two of them had crossed the sea and arrived on land. Yuan Jianqing closed his eyes and sensed for a moment, then opened them and said, "The monster is not far ahead." Zhang Chan said excitedly, "This time, it won't be able to escape." The two of them approached quickly, and from far away, they saw a small beast lying in the grass. It had a pair of rabbit ears and looked like a leopard. Its head was big and its body was small, and it was fluffy. However, it looked very agile, and its nose was constantly moving, as if it was looking for something. All of a sudden, it shuddered and turned around to look. It saw two streaks of light flying towards it, so it immediately leaped up and flipped into the clouds, and its speed was extremely swift. Yuan Jianqing and Zhang Chan followed closely. This small monster was very cunning, and if they were not careful, it could slip away. The long-eared monster came to the sky above a valley, and its body curled up and fell into the grass. Then, it ran deep into the valley. Zhang Chan saw its escape route, and couldn't help but curse, "How cunning." This place was obviously the territory of a big monster, and this long-eared monster was trying to lure them there to stop them. However, this time, it made a mistake. Yuan Jianqing took out a spell, and the two of them immediately hid their aura. Although the rays of light were still around them, all the monsters ignored them. This was using the sensory nerve to conceal its external senses. As long as he could sustain it with his arcane energy, those monsters without intelligence would not be able to detect him. The two of them were well prepared this time. This time, the long-eared monster did not run far before they caught up. Yuan Jianqing pointed downwards, and it could only turn around on the spot. Perhaps knowing that it could not escape, it hugged its head and covered its eyes with its two long ears, and shouted on the ground, "Don't kill me, don't kill me." Its voice was like a young girl's, and it sounded very crisp. Zhang Chan said curiously, "Being able to speak human language, it really has intelligence." Yuan Jingqing said, "You're right. Looks like this pair of long ears isn't just for show." Zhang Chan was shocked, and then he clicked his tongue. This meant that not only did it hear their conversation, it even learned it. However, those were only words that did not affect the overall situation. When it came to the matters of the sect, the two of them used telepathy to communicate, so there was no need to worry about it being leaked. Yuan Jianqing stretched out his hand and took the long-eared monster, and held it in his palm, and said, "Do you have a name?" The long-eared monster's body trembled slightly, and said, "This little monster's name is Yuqiu." Yuan Jianqing said, "Most of the monsters on this planet are wild and violent, and they are driven by their nature, but you have intelligence. Can you tell me why?" Yuqiu said, "I don't know what happened, I just slept on a boundary, and then I can speak." Zhang Chan said, "Where is that boundary?" Yuqiu twisted his body, and said reluctantly, "It's the boundary where I came from." Yuan Jianqing said, "You've been lingering there. Are you trying to find the thing that can make you speak?" Yuqiu nodded repeatedly. Zhang Chan's eyes lit up, and he said, "I didn't expect that the thing we're looking for is so close." Yuan Jianqing said, "Whether it's what we're looking for, we'll know after we take a look." The two of them immediately turned back, and not long after, they arrived at the boundary. They didn't notice it the last time they came, but this time, there were many collapsed rocks among the weeds, and there were traces of artificial polishing. It seemed that there was once an intelligent creature living here. Yuan Jingqing tried to sense for a long time, but he could vaguely sense that there seemed to be a hole below. Logically speaking, with his current ability, he could clearly see thousands of feet below with a single glance. However, there was an obstruction here, so someone must have done something to it. He passed the Yuqiu in his hand to Zhang Chan, and said, "There's something strange here, junior brother Chan, look after this little demon, I'll go down and take a look." Zhang Chan patted his chest, and said, "Jinren Yuan, don't worry, with me watching, it won't be able to escape." Yuan Jianqing took out a talisman, and with the activation of his mana, it turned into a 5-colored spiritual light, and then he went down into the depths of the ground. The talisman was the 5 elements escape talisman given by Zhang Yan, and it could help him travel freely underground. Although he could do it with his current mana, it wasn't as easy as it was now. He didn't know how far down he went, but he felt some obstruction. He used his mana to protect himself, and after a while, he found that there was no danger inside, so he pushed forward, and he had already broken through. When he looked up, he found that he had come to an empty cave, and the ground was full of cracks, and there was a thick layer of dust. He looked around, and it didn't feel like this place was dug out, but it was shaken by some kind of chi dynamic, and it was slowly eroded and hollowed out. The process seemed to be continuing, but at the same time, it seemed like some kind of power was suppressing it, and it couldn't be released. He paused for a moment, and then he followed the source of the chi dynamic. After about 100 miles, he saw a light in front of him, and looking at it, he saw a soft jade ball floating in the air in front of him. It was about the size of a fist, and a soft light bloomed from it. He couldn't see through what it was, so he didn't dare to be careless. He raised his finger, and a mana doppelganger appeared, and slowly floated in that direction. It didn't meet any obstacles along the way, and it smoothly arrived in front of that thing. He looked at it carefully, but he didn't act rashly. But at this moment, there was a thought transmitted from that thing, as if it was begging him to take it away. Yuan Jingqing observed it with concentration. Logically speaking, it should be a living being that was capable of transmitting thoughts, but he couldn't sense a trace of vitality from this thing. Moreover, he faintly had the feeling that if he were to rashly take this thing away, then it would definitely cause unforeseen consequences. In fact, even if he did this, he might not succeed. He closed his eyes and sensed for a while, and he could clearly feel two chi dynamics colliding with each other, especially the power outside, which was vast and surging, like a ferocious and boundless ocean. A thought flashed through his mind. If the chi activity in this place was coming from this soft jade ball, then where did it come from outside? Previously, he couldn't find out, but now here, he could use the soft chi dynamics to push it back, and use Yuan Qin's sensory nerve to illuminate it. As he thought of this, he immediately sat down cross-legged. He used all his concentration to circulate the skill, and after a long time, in his mind, the entire red burning earth star shone in. And at this moment, he finally understood that this place full of red light was not some earth star, but a drop of blood essence, a drop of pure and flawless blood essence. Chapter 1476. Yuan Jingqing took a deep breath. No wonder the demons in the planet were so violent, and most of them were irrational. It was all due to the influence of this drop of blood. But who was the owner of this blood? It looked like this had been going on for tens of thousands of years, and there was no sign of it fading away. On the contrary, it made this place abnormally rich with spiritual vigor. This was very scary. As far as he knew, without enough spiritual vigor, a mortal metamorphosis cultivator might not be able to live for tens of thousands of years just by consuming his primordial chi. However, this was only limited to the first mortal metamorphosis realm. As for those who had cut off their past and future bodies, they could not be estimated with common sense. Also, if it was a cultivator of Qi Dao, at this stage, he would have long abandoned his physical body and only used his Dharma body to stay in the world. Naturally, there would not be any blood. Therefore, the biggest possibility was that the person who left the blood was not a human but a different species. By the same logic, this jade was firmly suppressed here by this drop of blood essence, so it was clearly not an ordinary object. Yuan Jingqing pondered for a long time. He felt that this matter was not something he could solve. He wanted to report this matter to the sect and let his master decide how to deal with it. He did not touch the soft jade and used the talisman to escape. Not long after, he returned to the surface. Jingyu saw him coming up and asked, "Jinren Jing, did you find anything?" Yuan Jingqing said, "I found something. I roughly know the source of the abnormality of this planet. However, I'm afraid the matter behind this is not something I can interfere with. I need to go back and report to my master." Jingyu saw that he was serious. Although he was curious, he knew the rules and did not ask anymore. He said, "Do you want to report to master?" "All right, I haven't returned to the sect for a long time. This time I will go back with you." He looked at the fur coat in his hand and asked, "What about this long-eared little demon?" Yuan Jianqing looked and said, "This little demon is also related to this matter. Let's bring it back as well." Zhang Chan took out a beast trap and put it in, ignoring the fur coat's complaints. He said, "Since we are going back, why don't we bring the demon in the cave as well?" Yuan Jianqing said, "These are your gains, Junior Marshal Brother Chan. Of course, it's up to you to decide." Zhang Chan said, "Then there's no need to wait. We'll depart soon." After the two finished their discussion, they flew back to the cave abode. After entering the cave, Zhang Chan tossed out a spiritual boat and put all the demons into it. Since he might have to come back, he left the rest of the things in the cave abode. Then, the two of them rode the spiritual boat and turned into a rainbow light, breaking through the atmosphere and heading toward the outer space. However, this time, Yuan Jianqing found that there were many ribbon-like fish in the red light. Alarmed by the spiritual boat, they swarmed toward it at high speed. He asked, "What are these? I didn't see him on the way here." Zhang Chan said, "I don't know what these things are, but they're very fierce and can even wear down spiritual vigor restriction spells. When I came here the first time, I wasn't prepared, and the spiritual boat was bitten by them. This time, I won't let them succeed." Last time, he made a mistake because he didn't know what was going on. This time, he drove the spiritual boat carefully and flew at full speed, so he easily got rid of these gossamer fish. Soon, the two of them returned to the palace that was hovering in the void. Here, they didn't need to be wary of those demons anymore. Yuan Jianqing looked at the path-seeking chess in the pond and said, "On the way back, I wanted to play a game with Junior Marshal Brother Chan, but the outcome of this game has been decided, so there's no need to play anymore." Hearing this, Zhang Chan wasn't convinced. He rolled up his sleeves, grabbed the chess stick, and leaped onto the stone platform. He pointed at it and said, "Jinren Jing, don't look down on me. Come, let's continue." Yuan Jianqing said, "Since Junior Marshal Brother Chan insists, I'll play with you this time." He grabbed the chess stick and stood still on the stone platform. As the two of them played, there were about 10 disciples working together to control the wheel and steer the palace back. Because of the formation, their return journey was very fast. In less than a year, the palace appeared on the mountain and sea land. But now that they were here, they couldn't fly as freely as before. In the past, to guard against possible invasion from the outer space, this place was filled with restrictive formations. Later, when the Junqian realm was pacified, because of the dangers in the outer space, no one knew if there would be living beings from the outer space breaking in. It was necessary for such a barrier to exist, so they didn't remove it. Therefore, after a few more days, the two of them both of them were able to pass through the restrictive formations and land in the Dragon Abyss Sea Marsh. In the Xianyuan small world, Zhang Yan sat on the cliff. From time to time, he would use his mana to move the earth fire. At this moment, the dragon heart above the heavenly cauldron of earth fire had become faintly discernible, as if it was covered by a thin layer of gauze. This was because the Xianyuan small world was gradually merging into one. What he saw here was the part that had not been completely refined. After he succeeded, this item would no longer exist alone. It would become a part of the entire small world. By then, he would be on the right path. At this moment, Jingyu walked up from the foot of the mountain. Seeing that the cauldron was burning, he took a few steps back and waited at the side with his head lowered. Zhang Yan retracted some of his mana and asked, "What's the matter?" Jingyu bowed and said, "Master, Jinren Yuan and Chan Langjun have returned to the sect. They are asking for an audience outside the hall. They said that they found something in the virtual sky and wanted to report it to you." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "Call them in." Jingyu bowed, turned around and left. After a long time, the door between the two worlds opened under the cliff. Yuan Jianqing and Zhang Chan both came to the small world. Jingyu took out the talisman and opened the prohibition in front of the mountain. He said, "Master is on the cliff. You two can go on your own." Yuan Jianqing said, "Thank you, Junior Apprentice Brother Jing." Jingyu smiled and said, "It's all right. I still have things to do in the hall. I won't be accompanying you. Yuan Jianqing and Zhang Chan saw that there was a prohibition set up here. They knew that it must be an important place. Thus, they did not fly but walked up the mountain steps. After about 2 hours, they arrived at the peak of the mountain. From here, they could see the heavenly cauldron of earth fire that was surrounded by the cliff. They could also vaguely see the dragon heart in the middle. Zhang Chan took a look and said in a low voice, Jinren Jing, is Master refining a talisman? Yuan Jianqing could feel that the dragon heart was somewhat extraordinary. He said, that should be the case. The two of them arrived at Zhang Yan's seat and bowed. Yuan Jianqing said, disciple greets master. Zhang Yan made a few hand seals to slightly suppress the fire in the cauldron. He retracted his mana and ordered Mountain River Child to continue taking care of it. Then, he pointed to the front and said, come and take a look. This item will be the Xianyuan lineage's treasure in the future. However, it is only roughly refined now. In my plan, if this treasure is completed, it will not be limited to itself. It will be like that living creature, with unlimited possibilities. Zhang Chan was shocked. He said, Master, are you talking about the living refinement technique that can refine a demon intercepting technique? Zhang Yan smiled and said, this is indeed a reference to the living refinement technique, but it is not completely the same. I don't want an independent living creature, but a treasure that can protect my lineage. Speaking up to this point, he looked at the two of them and said, just now, Jing Yuyan, did you two find anything this time? Yuan Jianqing took a step forward and bowed. He said, Master, after I received orders to go to the red scorching earth star, I felt that this star was very strange and unreasonable. Later, I joined forces with junior brother Jing to investigate for 3 years and found that there was an item suppressed deep under the ground. However, it was only a drop of blood that was used to suppress this item. We don't know who left this drop of blood, but not only did it exist for tens of thousands of years, it even covered the entire Earth star. It's really amazing. Zhang Chan also just found out about this. He was extremely shocked and his eyes widened. Using a drop of blood to cover the Earth star, even the demon ancestor might not be able to do that, right? Zhang Yan's expression was the same as ever. He only said, such a drop of blood, the owner must not be simple. Yuan Jianqing said, disciple also thought so, so I didn't dare to act rashly. I wanted to come back and report it to master. Zhang Yan said, in your opinion, who left it behind? Yuan Jianqing said, disciple heard rumors about Bo Bai and Bo Xian after coming to the mountain and sea realm. If it was left behind by a creature from the inner realm, could it be related to those two? Zhang Yan shook his head and said, if the two of them really are as powerful as the legends say, then this drop of blood has nothing to do with them. Yuan Jianqing bowed and said, disciple doesn't understand the mysteries, master, please enlighten me. Zhang Yan smiled and said, because your realm is not high enough, it is difficult for you to determine the true cultivation of the owner of the blood. In fact, there is someone in my Qinsang school who can do such a thing. Yuan Jianqing thought for a moment and said, is it Taoist in Gui? Zhang Yan smiled and nodded. In truth, his strength had already reached the 6th revolution, but he hadn't found the root of it yet. If he wanted to, it wouldn't be difficult for him to create such a scene. Zhang Chan suddenly asked, Master, if Bo Bai and Bo Xian are really here, what kind of method would they use? Zhang Yan thought for a moment and said, I haven't reached such a realm, so I can't say for sure. But if they really have that kind of ability, it would be normal for them to destroy a realm. Why would they need to use blood to suppress external objects? Besides, what living beings feel might not be true. It's like how we stand above the sun and moon. The living beings on Earth believe that since ancient times, Bo Bai and Bo Xian have been in control of the world. But that is only the afterimage of the radiance of the stars. In reality, there are no such things. Yuan Jianqing said, in that case, the mountain and sea realm never had Bo Bai and Bo Xian. Is it just a figment of the ancient living beings of this realm? Zhang Yan smiled and said, that's not necessarily the case. Rumors come from an empty cave, but there is a reason. Even if such people existed, they wouldn't let ordinary living beings see them. Although there is something strange about this blood essence, since you can sense it so easily, it is most likely not an almighty being that can't be fought against. Master thinks that it might be an alien like the Great Kuan. From his point of view, the blood essence was actually a trace left behind. If one's cultivation base was high enough, they could trace it back to its source and see its true appearance. Even if that wasn't the case, they would still be able to deduce its general strength. Yuan Jianqing said, Master, how should we handle this matter? Zhang Yan thought about it for a moment, then said, I will go personally. If this person has left, then so be it. But if he is still in the mountain and sea realm, then I will have to find him. That way, there won't be any hidden dangers. Chapter 1477. Since Zhang Yan had made his decision, Yuan Jianqing and Zhang Chan were relieved. They did not need to intervene in the follow-up matters. Zhang Chan said, Master, I have brought a lot of monsters from the Earth Star to present to you. Zhang Yan nodded, You're too considerate. When we return, you should place them in the Azure Sky Hall. The Azure Sky Palace had found a lot of monsters and grass spirits over the years. The variety of living creatures had become very rich. Moreover, he had reshaped the land and created many spiritual mountains and rivers. It was also full of spiritual vigor. Now it was a blessed land outside the mansion. Moreover, after these monsters had cultivated for a long time, they could also become the helpers of the Xianyuan sect in the future. They could be used to guard the cave, or become a mount or a protector. They could even be released to serve the disciples. Zhang Chan agreed. At this moment, he seemed to have thought of something. He patted his head and said, Oh right, I almost forgot. He took out the beast trap and released the fur coat from it. He said, Master, and this little demon. I have been in the red scorching earth star with Jinren Yuan for many years. I am afraid that because of the blood essence, most of the monsters are violent and tyrannical. Only this demon has not been infected. Instead, it has developed spiritual wisdom. Jinren Yuan and I both thought that it was because it had benefited from the thing that was suppressed. The fur coat had been trapped for a long time. When it suddenly saw the light of day again, it instinctively wanted to jump a few times. However, it seemed to be very sensitive to the changes in the outside world. It sensed that there was a breath here that was as vast as the sea. In front of this breath, even the most ferocious big demon on the red scorching earth star was like a small insect. It could not be compared to this breath. Immediately, it stayed where it was and did not dare to move. Zhang Yan glanced at it. He could see that this little demon had indeed received some kind of external favor. Its blood essence and spiritual wisdom had been greatly improved. If it was an ordinary demon before, now it could be called a spiritual beast. Just now, from what Yuan Jianqing had said, the thing that caused this anomaly must be the thing that was suppressed by the blood essence. He didn't know what kind of thing could actually have such a method. His interest was suddenly piqued. He didn't know how far this demon could go in the future. He said, Send this demon under Zihong's tutelage. He can do whatever he wants with it. Zhang Chan bowed and said, This lowly one understands. Zhang Yan came down and asked about the details of the Scarlet Earth Star, then gave them a few pointers and said, You two can go now. Zhang Chan hasn't been back to the Shanghai continent for a long time. I'll allow you to stay here for a few more days. Zhang Chan said happily, Thank you, Master. Zhang Yan gently waved his sleeve. He and Yuan Jianqing bowed, then stepped down from the cliff and left the small world. After sitting for a while, his spirit intent rose and he informed Sect Master Qin that he wanted to go to planet Virtual Sky and Earth Star to find the owner of the blood essence. Sect Master Qin said, To be able to preserve the blood essence for 10,000 years, its strength isn't weak. Hall Master Duzhen's trip might not be peaceful. A few days ago, Jun Chen World offered some purple clear great medicine, take some with you. After Jun Chen World was pacified, Rao Jifeng and Bei Xiangtong had kept a lot of purple clear spiritual vigor. They didn't dare to keep it for themselves, so they refined it into great medicine and offered it. Qinsang, Shaoqing, and Lingmen sects each got a portion. Zhang Yan bowed and said, "Thank you, sect master." If the owner of the blood essence had already broken the world and left, he would be able to come back soon. If it was still in the world, then he would have to find it. There was no formation path in the depths of the void, so it might take a long time. Moreover, he might encounter enemies, so it was necessary to bring the great medicine along. Speaking of which, with Rao Jifeng and Bei Xiangtong's continuous delivery of purple clear spiritual vigor, including the few reverence fan too inside, they would have more time to cultivate in the future. They were all considering if they should let the Gong brothers who were still trapped in the small pot world to do this, but it was not decided yet. A few days later, after Zhang Yan settled the matters in the cave abode, he called Pig Bull to board a palace and headed towards the formation path in the sky. There were a few halls built around the formation path in the Mystic Essence faction, and there were many cultivators coming and going. From time to time, he would see some barbarians with tentacles growing on their heads, but most of the people here were mystic cultivators from the 100 countries of Eastern Wasteland. After the demons and beasts at the periphery of Eastern Wasteland were suppressed, there were no longer any great threats. In order to avoid internal conflicts, the 100 countries also made many vows of alliance, and the stronger demons in the 100 South Sea continent were restrained by the Bull Dragon clan, so they no longer headed north. There were no strong enemies outside, and there were no killings inside. This period of time could be said to be the most peaceful period for the countries of Eastern Wasteland in tens of thousands of years. Many disciples of the academy had the idea of traveling around, and going to the stars above the sea of mountains and seas was something worth boasting about when they came back. Many of them were willing to pay a great price to travel to the virtual sky, but the price was also very high. Therefore, those who could come here were mostly of noble birth. The person guarding the formation path saw a palace coming, and his expression changed. He recognized it and suddenly stood up, saying, "It's the ancestral master's Dermot carriage, order everyone to leave." As the order was given, everyone was moved to the surrounding halls by the teleportation formation. At the same time, layers of restrictive formations were activated, and countless lights flashed. This wasn't to guard against anyone, but to protect the formation path and the many temples here. The morale force of ordinary cultivators was too great, and even if they tried their best to restrain it, it could still cause violent tremors when passing through the formation path. After a while, a dazzling rainbow like the Milky Way spread out and shone on the palace, guiding it towards the formation path. In the palace, a 13 or 14-year-old youth stood on the platform of the temple, looking at the starry sky. This was the young master of the Shuhui nation, Yuan Jingqian. He looked at the incoming palace, and asked the elders standing beside him, "Elder Zai, do you think that's the Dermot carriage of Lord Xianyuan?" Elder Zai bowed and said, "Young master, you're right. That's the Dermot carriage of Lord Xianyuan." Yuan Jingqian's eyes lit up, and he said, "In another year, my father will send me to the north to cultivate, and I haven't decided which sect to choose." "Elder Zai, what do you think about enrolling in Qinsang school?" All these years, the feudal lords would invite cultivators to check the aptitude of their children, and his aptitude was determined to be the best. The sects that were out of reach for others were easy for him to enter. Zai Daoren said, "Qinsang school is only on par with Shaoqing among the sects in the 9 continents, and they have many cultivation techniques, which is good. However, I think that if young master enters another sect, you might be able to achieve something, and it might be easier." Yuan Jianqian was puzzled. "Why is that?" Elder Zai pointed out, "There are many disciples in Qinsang school, and there are countless people with outstanding aptitudes. It's difficult to stand out. On the other hand, other sects have fewer competitors, and it's easier for them to stand out. If they are recognized by the elders of the sect, their achievements might not be low." Yuan Jingqian shook his head, and said, "Tigers and leopards don't associate with jackals and wolves. If all they see are mediocre people, then no matter how talented they are, they will only be mediocre." Elder Zai showed a gratified expression, and said, "Young master has great ambitions, unlike this old man. With young master here, there's no need to worry about the future of the Shuhui nation. Yuan Jingqian was a little embarrassed by his words, and he said, I'm not as good as Elder Zai said. Elder Zai's words are the truth, and I can tell. It's just that there's a chance in front of me, and if I don't fight for it, I'll feel a little unwilling in my heart. Elder Zai said seriously, if young master wants to do it, then do it. Although it's said that mystic cultivators can cultivate to the state of purple sun, other than the 3 high priests of the past, and the few great mystic cultivators, no one has been able to enter this door. Looking at the world, only the path of cultivating qi seems to be endless. Young master, you have to grasp this opportunity well. Don't say things that will betray your country, but first, don't betray yourself. Yuan Jingqian put his hands together, and said sincerely, I will remember Elder Zai's words. While the two of them were talking, the huge palace had already passed through the path of arrays, and everyone felt a slight tremor under their feet. The spiritual light that was emitted by the arrays only dissipated after a long time. After traveling through the path of arrays for half a year, the palace appeared on the other side. Zhang Yan looked over, and very quickly, he found the location of the crimson expanse Earth star among the many stars. He sat on the back of the boar bull, and with a thought, he teleported across the void and arrived in front of the Earth star. As he arrived, the star in front of him started to rumble, and he could see a sudden flood on the surface of the Earth, and the Earth was spitting fire. Because of his approach, the drop of blood essence felt a great pressure, and that was why it had such a reaction. If he insisted on going forward, it might just collapse. Zhang Yan was here for the whereabouts of the owner of the drop of blood essence. There might be some clues left on this Earth star, and he did not want to destroy it. Moreover, the spiritual vigor here was abundant, and it might become a lower house in the future. Therefore, when he noticed this, he restrained his qi dynamic a little. When a cultivator of the qi Dao reached the second stage, he could see the past. Now, his cultivation had not reached this stage, but just by holding a wisp of blood essence in his hand, he could deduce the original level of the owner. He stretched out his hand and caught a scarlet light. After sensing it for a moment, he could immediately determine that this was the essence blood of a different species. Moreover, it had already entered the end of its lifespan. Back then, its cultivation seemed to be a level higher than the sky ghost demon ancestor that he had seen, but it wasn't too much. If it still existed, due to the limited life force of a living being, its strength might not rise but fall. He looked up and saw that the Earth star had calmed down. He thought for a moment, then separated a shadow avatar, and passed through the red atmosphere. Soon, he arrived on the surface of the Earth, identified the direction, and flew toward the place that Yuan Jingqian had mentioned before. Wherever this avatar passed, all the monsters seemed to be unaware. This was not the kind of concealment technique, but he had already formed a world of his own. At this moment, he restrained his qi dynamic, and in the eyes of many creatures, he did not exist, so naturally, they would not have any reaction. Not long after, he came to the sky above the boundary. When he arrived here, he could feel that there was a huge crack below, and there was also a huge strip-shaped hole in the ground. Judging in his heart, it was obvious that the original location of the suppressed thing was not here, but when it sensed that there was a crack in the ground, it wanted to escape from here, so it spent more than 10,000 years to move here from another direction. After looking, he sank the avatar, turned into a golden light, and flew underground. Chapter 1478. In the depths of the ground, a ray of clear light shone down. When it slowly dissipated, Zhang Yan's doppelganger appeared from within. He sensed that there was a faintly discernible aura in the depths of the cave, but at this moment, it was constantly moving away, as if it was trying to avoid it. He couldn't help but think to himself, this thing is indeed not a dead thing, but it has spirituality. Everything in the world, as long as it has spirituality, it would know how to seek benefits and avoid harm. Previously, this thing did not avoid Yuan Jingqian, but that was because the latter's power was not enough to hurt it. But this time, it was different. Zhang Yan's aura was so strong that even the blood essence that enveloped the entire planet almost couldn't withstand it. Even if it was only a doppelganger, it would still pose a serious threat to it. Zhang Yan's doppelganger didn't immediately chase after it. That thing had been trapped here for more than 10,000 years, which meant that there was a way out. Therefore, as long as it was still on this planet, there was no need to worry about where it could escape to. Glancing around, the situation here was roughly the same as what his disciple, Yuan Jianqing, had said. The two auras clashed with each other, and after a long period of wear and tear, the changes in front of him appeared. After observing for a while, he had a rough idea of the ability of this thing. It didn't have any powerful means, or rather, it couldn't use them at all. It could only take advantage of the situation and look for loopholes. But in this aspect, in fact, it was actually more brilliant than blindly using brute force. After checking out the situation, he slowly followed it. After about half a day, the road had come to an end. He could feel that the thing had shrunk into a pit in front of him and was motionless. According to his disciple, Yuan Jianqing, this thing would emit a faint light. But at this moment, he was already not far away, but he couldn't see it. He thought for a while and understood that this should be the spiritual thing concealing itself. But since he was already here, he had a clear goal, and any disguise would be useless. Not long after, the clone finally arrived at the deepest part of the cave and saw the object with a single glance. At first glance, it was indeed a ball of soft and beautiful jade. However, that was only its appearance. In his eyes, there was clearly a ball of thought entrusted to it. A living being's will was formless and intangible. However, once a living being reached a certain realm, they would be able to manifest it in a certain way and be seen by their peers. Zhang Yan could clearly feel that this item was not an innate one, nor was it the handiwork of a human cultivator. Without the suppression of the blood essence, if the jade of consciousness was allowed to spread, the demons and monsters of this planet would soon gain sentience. However, the demons and monsters themselves would also be slowly consumed until they turned into nothingness. Therefore, the essence blood didn't completely suppress it, but it also protected it. However, this couldn't completely stop the jade of consciousness. For example, the feathered fur coat was probably born under the influence of this item. When Zhang Yan arrived here, he could truly understand why the jade of consciousness did this. Under the influence of the drop of essence blood, the violent and ferocious monsters would only be driven by their instincts. They only knew how to kill and hunt, and it was almost impossible for them to cultivate. With such a huge amount of spiritual vigor, they didn't know how to use it. The feathered fur coat was probably the only living being on this planet that had sentience. It could be imagined that under the influence of the jade of consciousness, it would gradually understand the method of cultivation. As its cultivation level increased, it would also be more eager to obtain the jade. Under such circumstances, it would definitely use all its strength to dig the crack in the ground and take it out. This would also achieve the purpose of the jade of consciousness's escape. Zhang Yan was very interested in this item. However, he changed his mind. It was not easy to uncover the secret of the jade of consciousness. This was because once the consciousness resisted, it would be very difficult to break through. If he tried to force it, he was afraid that he would rather be destroyed than get any results. After thinking for a while, he decided to keep it first. As long as this item was in his hands, there would always be a way. Now, the focus should be on the foreign species that left behind the essence blood. However, he didn't immediately reach out to take it. Before that, he made some arrangements. These two chi dynamics had been entangled here for more than 10,000 years, and they had reached a delicate balance. It could be said that it was closely related to the landscape of the entire planet and the reproduction of living beings. If he suddenly broke this balance, it would most likely cause irreparable damage. He still wanted to run this place as a secondary residence, so he naturally didn't want to see this result. After some consideration, he decided to set up a formation here. This formation needed to fill the gap left after taking away the jade of consciousness, and also to ease the tyrannical breath in the essence blood. In addition, it could better make full use of the rich spiritual vigor here. With an idea in mind, he began to try to predict the changes of spiritual vigor in this planet. The spiritual vigor that was triggered by the essence blood was not static. When the essence blood was exhausted, everything would return to its original state. After this round of calculation, he now estimated that after about 50,000 years, this drop of essence blood would officially enter the day of decline. After that, the rate of decline would get faster and faster, and in just a short 100 years, it would disappear completely. Even if there were some remnants, they would only be left in some special boundaries, and would no longer affect the entire planet. Originally, after 10,000 years of nourishment, there were many spiritual mountains and beautiful rivers on the ground. However, this time was still too short, and the spiritual veins that were nurtured were still very weak compared to the entire planet. Perhaps, it would be destroyed by a natural disaster. What he needed to do was to find a way to extend this process, and try his best to slow down the dissipation of the spiritual vigor. When the mountain and water spiritual veins were truly mature, then there would be no need to waste any more effort on it. This shadow avatar waved his sleeves, and brought out many precious materials from the small world. He also sacrificially refined a few formation flags on the spot, and then scattered them in the cave. This was the first time he personally set up a formation after attaining mortal shedding. Compared to before, there was a different feeling. He recalled the various changes in the past, and in his spirit, he deduced the various changes related to the future, and compared them with each other. Gradually, there was a strange feeling in his heart. The current him and the past seemed to have become two completely different people. However, without the past, there would not be the present. However, when he reached this state, there would not be any thoughts of the present, and the past would not exist. If this was the case, the past might not be the past, and only existed in his thoughts, and there would no longer be a clear boundary between reality and illusion. At this moment, he seemed to have touched something, and fell into deep thought. Unknowingly, his spirit continued to rise, and his entire person seemed to be flying forward. At this moment, he had a clear feeling that if he allowed this process to continue, he might be able to successfully cut off his past body. However, at this moment, he decisively and calmly withdrew from this mysterious state. Currently, his accumulated FA power was not sufficient. Borrowing this unexpected opportunity, he was able to step into the second level in one go. In the future, it would be much more difficult for him to advance further. If it was serious, he might not even be able to see the higher levels. Looking at the results, this was actually a demonic barrier. The benefits that he saw now might not necessarily be the real benefits, and the fate of the present might not necessarily be the creation of the future. He thought that on his path of cultivation, there was no need to look into the sudden changes in perception. He only needed to follow the prescribed order, accumulate his cultivation, and when the time was right, he would naturally be able to cross the threshold. Of course, this was also the reason why he could make such a choice, and it was not suitable for the lower generation cultivators. Even if there was an opportunity, it would be better to grasp it firmly, otherwise, there would be no future to talk about. He shook his head with a smile, then cast these thoughts aside and focused on setting up the spell formation. As his mana fell, the restrictive spell formation gradually expanded in the cavern. 10 days passed quickly, and a huge spell formation appeared in the cavern. As it operated, it not only calmed down the previously oppressive spiritual energy, but also slowly retracted it to maintain its own circulation. This was not a blind demand, but rather, a gradual return of the spiritual energy to the mountains, rivers, and earth. Seeing that he had succeeded, the clone withdrew his mana. Even without the will jade, it would not have much of an effect on the crimson scorching earth. Therefore, he waved his sleeve and sucked it in, then transformed into a beam of clear light that shot out of the earth to meet up with his real body. Zhang Yan looked down at the crimson planet below him. The next thing he needed to do was to find the owner of the essence blood, and eliminate any potential dangers in the mountain and sea realm. There was a simple method that he could try. If the owner of the will jade had been placed here to suppress and protect the essence blood, then they might not have been completely at ease. It was likely that they had left behind some sort of warning device, and if the essence blood stirred, they might be able to sense it. If the owner of this blood essence was still alive, he would definitely come to check it out. All he had to do was wait here. If he didn't come after a long time, based on the lifespan he had previously deduced, it was very likely that he was already dead, unless he didn't have the ability to come. Unfortunately, so much time had passed, and anything could go wrong. In order to play it safe, he used some of his magic to throw the Essence Blood's aura into chaos. If the owner of the Essence Blood still didn't show up, then there was nothing to worry about. Having done that, he sent the guinea pig out to stand guard, while he sat down in the palace, cultivating and waiting patiently. He had prepared quite a bit of violet pure spirit chi before leaving. Cultivating here would not be any slower than in the mountain and sea realm. In order to avoid any mishaps, he didn't go back to the lesser realm to refine the magical item. Instead, he left the matter to the mountain and river child. In the blink of an eye, 3 years had passed. One day, as Zhang Yan was cultivating, he suddenly heard a strange sound reverberating in the sky. The sound was very rhythmic, like a low chant, but also like a light singing. This was not a normal sound, but a direct response. He opened his eyes and used his divine will to find the source. Suddenly, a strange bird with white wings appeared in front of him. The strange bird didn't seem to notice his gaze. Clearly, the sound just now was also unintentional. Zhang Yan pondered for a moment, but he still couldn't confirm whether or not this bird had anything to do with the owner of the Essence Blood. After all, there were many unknown monsters in the void, and the spiritual chi on the scarlet scorching earth star was abundant, so it wasn't strange for it to attract them. Also, if the owner of the Essence Blood was a bit more cunning, he could also send a few unrelated monsters to test it out. As for whether or not it was true, he would find out when it came. Chapter 1479. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. To provide you with wonderful novels to read. The white-feathered strange bird gradually flew closer to the crimson earth star, but it did not land. Instead, it circled around the entire earth star, as if it was looking for something. Zhang Yan had already restrained his chi to the point where it was faintly discernible, so as not to scare the strange bird away. He did not make a move, but just watched from the side. From the behavior of the strange bird, it seemed to have a purpose for coming here. After the white-feathered strange bird hovered for a long time, it gently sucked in the red light. After a while, a faint red light appeared on its body, but it only lasted for a moment before disappearing. Zhang Yan understood the intention of this. It was using the strong spiritual vigor emitted from the blood essence to refine itself. However, this strange white-feathered bird knew how to make a trade-off and was not greedy. It actually knew that if too much blood essence was absorbed, it would cause itself to be lost, causing it to become like those demons who only knew how to chase after their instincts, so it only took a small amount. Whether this was taught by others or its own perception, it was still not sure, but if it was the former, it was very worth investigating. The strange white-feathered bird stayed here for more than 100 days, but it did not go deep into the Earth star, so it turned around and left. Before it left, Zhang Yan placed a strand of his aura on its body, preparing to see just where the strange bird would go. His true body would remain here. This wait lasted for another 3 years, except for the big bird from before, no other creatures came. On the other side, the white-feathered strange bird had already arrived on a dark blue star. The surface of this star was almost completely covered in seawater, and there were only a few pieces of land. The rest were all mountain islands that protruded from the surface of the water, and they were scattered in all directions. The place where the strange bird lived was on a towering tree that reached into the clouds. The branches of this tree were pure white, and all the birds that lived here were this kind of white-feathered bird. The one that came to the crimson earth first was the largest, and it seemed to be the leader of the flock. The nest it resided in was incomparably huge. It was just slightly below the top of the white tree, and was covered by a huge leaf. The nest was not flat, but had many levels. The interior was as vast as a mountain, and there were all kinds of strange flowers and plants growing there. About 1,000 strange birds were circling in the air. Zhang Yan observed the earth star through the eyes of the strange bird. Most of the ordinary demon birds here lived by hunting for giant fish in the sea. They only needed 1 day to hunt, but they needed 3 times the time to rest. However, this was not the case for all of them. Because the white wood could disperse spiritual vigor, it seemed that the leader of the strange bird lived by absorbing spiritual vigor. He noticed that every night, there would be a layer of faint glow circling around its body. This was a sign that it was about to transform. It was rare for a demon with a naturally strong body to succeed in transforming into a human form, unless they had obtained a precious medicine or guidance from a powerful being. As for cultivation methods, these wild demons were scattered all over the place. Even if they obtained it, it would be useless. Without someone to teach them the profound Tao and dispel their doubts, there was nothing they could not cultivate. The steps of the leader of the strange bird were very regular. Based on this, it could be deduced that it should have obtained some kind of opportunity. Looking at its behavior in the Crimson Earth Star, it was very likely that this was the arrangement left behind by the owner of the blood essence. Of course, all of this was just Zhang Yan's guess, but it was very easy to determine whether this was the case. He raised his sleeve and once again stirred up the spiritual vigor on the Crimson Earth Star. If the bird demon was alarmed, then it could be confirmed that there was a connection between the two. Not long after, the big white-feathered bird suddenly became a little irritated. It kept flapping its wings and looked at the sky from time to time. Sometimes, it would fly up, and after a while, it would land back to its nest. This repeated several times. Zhang Yan smiled faintly. The result was self-evident. The demon bird came here first to devour the spiritual vigor and also to check the situation. However, the problem was that he did not change much of the spiritual vigor environment of the Crimson Earth Star. He only made some slight changes. After all, it was just a bird, it was not very sensitive to the changes of spiritual vigor, so it did not notice anything. Although the white-feathered demon bird noticed the abnormality in some way, it still refused to leave. This was because it was about to transform. During this transformation, it needed to go through a huge amount of spiritual vigor. Not to mention that it would take a lot of time to go back and forth, there was no spiritual vigor for it to devour in the virtual sky. However, transforming was not something that could be stopped easily. If this opportunity was missed, then the next time might not be successful, and it was very likely that it would not be able to do it in the future. Zhang Yan did not care how it would choose. As long as it was confirmed that this demon was indeed related to the owner of the blood essence, then he could follow this clue to investigate. In the end, the strange white-feathered bird did not go to the Crimson Earth Star. From this point, it could be seen that the owner of the blood essence did not have a strong control over it. Perhaps, after such a long time, the means that had been set up earlier had been greatly weakened. Nearly a month later, the demon bird was shrouded in a ball of white light. It lay motionless in its nest. After a whole year, the brilliance gradually faded, and a beautiful and slender woman dressed in a white feather dress appeared. Just now, she came out and floated to the front of a clear lake. Using the water as a mirror, she looked at herself and took a piece of whitewood branch to make a comb. She slowly combed her long hair by the lake. However, she did not forget about the matter on the Crimson Earth Star. After staying here for a few days, she returned to her original form. She flapped her wings and flew towards the virtual sky. This time, her speed was extremely fast. In less than 2 years, she arrived at the destination. She circled around the Crimson Earth Star several times. She did not find anything different from the previous time. Seeing that there was no abnormality, she did not have the mood to stay here. Thus, she turned back. However, she did not go far when she suddenly felt an invisible whaley pressing down on her. After a moment of dizziness, she was shocked to find that she had landed in a palace. She immediately knew that she had encountered a mighty person. Fortunately, she had a similar experience before, so she did not panic. She calmed her mind and knelt on the ground. She said, "May I know which master is here? West Fuzi pays her respects here." A clear voice seemed to come from the sky. "Come to the palace to talk." West Fuzi responded and walked into the main hall. She saw a Taoist in a black robe sitting on a jade platform. Just now, when she wanted to look at his appearance, she felt dizzy and almost fell. Her chi dynamic became chaotic. Her face turned pale and she did not dare to look anymore. She knelt on the ground and said, "Greetings, Celestial Master." Then she asked nervously, "May I know what orders do you have for me to come here?" Zhang Yan looked down from his seat and said, "Do you have anything to do with this Earth Star?" West Fuzi shuddered a little and said, "Master, I have nothing to do with this Earth Star. But a long time ago, a mighty being came to me and asked me to guard this place. He asked me to not let any foreign species disturb the spiritual vigor of the Earth Star. He also gave me some pointers. I am indebted to him. So, I come here to guard this place every once in a while." Zhang Yan could tell that she was telling the truth. He asked, "How long did the fellow Taoist give you pointers, and where did he go in the end?" West Fuzi bowed his head and replied, "This mighty being stayed in this little demon's abode for a very long time. I don't know the exact time, but the sun and moon alternated about 10,000 times. Then, he flew away and this little demon has never seen him since." Zhang Yan calculated in his heart. According to the bird demon's location, that person must have stayed in the realm for about 30 years. From the blood essence, he could tell that he did not have long to live. He might not live more than 100 years. He stayed here for so long, and it was very likely that he was making arrangements for his death. If what he did later was true, he knew that his life was near and did not want to come back. Therefore, he asked this bird demon to guard him and left the mountain and sea realm. He thought for a while and said, "Did that fellow Taoist give me any special instructions?" West Fuzi thought for a while and said, "He didn't say anything special." Zhang Yan said, "You've been looking after this place for so many years. Have you ever thought that there might be some unique treasures left on the planet? Have you ever thought about going in and exploring it?" West Fuzi said in a low voice, "I have thought about it. However, even that mighty person treated it with great caution. How could I dare to covet it? Even if I took it, I would have to bear the karma. It doesn't belong to me in the first place. Even if I took it, I wouldn't have the good fortune to enjoy it. It's better to just accept it and return peace." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "Oh, so you also know about the karma of cultivators. Did you comprehend it yourself?" West Fuzi was surprised and said, "That's not it. After receiving the guidance of that mighty person, my memories gained many things that I didn't understand before. Even now, I still can't comprehend them. Just now, I've gained some understanding. Otherwise, I wouldn't have been able to answer Immortal Master's questions." Zhang Yan asked again, "Did that fellow Taoist say that if you encountered an enemy that you couldn't defend against, what would you do?" West Fuzi looked up and said, "That mighty person said that if I encountered someone that I couldn't defend against, then there was no need to worry about this place. Protecting my own life is the most important thing." Zhang Yan nodded and thought to himself, in that case, he must be someone with a Tao. By saying that he had a Tao, he meant that he had roots. Perhaps he came from some sect with a legacy. The demons, devils, and outsiders of the mountain and sea realm didn't care about such things. If he encountered something like this, he would definitely say that he would defend to the death. As for whether he lived or died, that had nothing to do with them. But this person didn't want to risk his life when dealing with a wild demon. That was enough to show that he was pure in nature. That, coupled with his previous methods, was not something that ordinary outsiders could cultivate. He thought for a moment and said, "Did this fellow Taoist leave behind any records?" West Fuzi said, "He did. It was a tortoise shell with many strange characters on it. However, I couldn't understand them." She hesitated for a moment and then said, "I am willing to offer this item to you, Immortal Master." Zhang Yan was surprised. He had just asked casually and hadn't expected that there would really be such a thing. Perhaps he could deduce the origin of this person. He smiled and said, "I want this item of yours. I'll take it for a moment and then return it to you. I won't look at it for nothing. I'll give some benefits to your clan in exchange." Chapter 1480. A genius in 1 second remembers Love Go. To provide you with wonderful novels to read. When West Fuzi heard this, She was terrified. Just now, she didn't mention anything about her tribe, but Zhang Yan knew about it. She felt that there was nothing to hide in front of this person. She trembled and said, "Yes, this little demon will go get it for Celestial Master." Zhang Yan understood that this bird demon was so proactive because she was afraid that he would harm her tribe if he went to her territory. However, he didn't plan to do so, so he said, "Slow down. With your speed, this is already very fast. Since you know how to cultivate, I will teach you a technique, memorize it." As he said this, he pointed a finger and a spirit light flew into the space between her eyebrows. Westfuzi was stunned for a moment, but her eyes lit up with gratitude. She kowtowed and said, "Thank you, Celestial Master, for the technique." The technique Zhang Yan gave her was based on her habits and characteristics. It was a technique he created with 9 numbers. With his current cultivation base, if he were to carefully deduce a technique, it could be regarded as a secret technique in an ordinary sect. If he were to delve deeper into this technique, there would be a lot of room for improvement. However, with Westfuzi's ability, she couldn't comprehend anything too profound, so a shallow one was just right. If you want to master it, it will take a long time. You can slowly comprehend it on the way back. Westfuzi quickly nodded and said, "Then this little demon will go now." Before she left, she didn't forget to bow to Zhang Yan and left the hall. When she was outside, she changed back to her original form and flew away. On the other hand, Zhang Yan cultivated in the temple and paid no attention to the affairs of the outside world. After sitting in seclusion here for 3 years, he suddenly sensed something and knew that the other party had returned. With a command in his heart, he opened the restrictions on the temple door. A white shadow flew in and turned into a woman in a white feather dress. She came up to the hall and bowed, "Celestial Master, please forgive me, this little demon is late." Zhang Yan said, "It's not bad. If you had used your original movement technique, it would have taken at least twice as long. It seems that your comprehension of the movement technique isn't slow." Westfuzi blushed and said with embarrassment, "This little demon is still slow, there are many things I don't understand." Zhang Yan said, "Cultivation is difficult. It hasn't been long since you obtained the cultivation technique, so your current achievement is not bad." Westfuzi turned her wrist and untied the tortoise shell from the knot. She held it up and said, "This is the item left behind by that Almighty, please take a look." With a single thought from Zhang Yan, the tortoise shell flew up from her hand and hovered in front of her. It was just an ordinary tortoise shell, but there were many characters engraved on it. Unsurprisingly, they were erosion characters. This person clearly had a sex inheritance. It was an ordinary tortoise shell, but it was engraved with many characters. As expected, they were erosion symbols, which indicated that this person had inherited the legacy of a sect. He couldn't help but be slightly surprised because this didn't seem like something that a figure that had attained success in the Tao should display at all. It was very unlikely that Qin Shi was acting like this because his lifespan was about to come to an end. Not to mention that cultivators could reincarnate. Any cultivator that had attained this level of cultivation had a lifespan of a few thousand or even 10,000 years. If they had seen through all of this, why would they put on such an act? Other than being laughed at by their fellow Taoists, there was no other use. If all of these were to make a cultivator of this level feel so depressed, then it could be said that he had encountered an unprecedented calamity and couldn't see any hope. Perhaps it was because the sect had declined and its inheritance had been severed because of this, and even if he reincarnated, he didn't know where he should go. Because of this, not only did he not know the origin of this item, but he was even more suspicious. This person had already arrived in the mountain and sea realm. Even if something major happened, she would still be the only one left of her sect, and the legacy could still be passed on. And yet, she hadn't chosen to do so. Did she think it was useless, or had she given up? He looked at the tortoise shell again, and then shook his head. Regardless of what had happened in the past, this person had already passed on for tens of thousands of years. At the very least, the mountain and sea realm was still peaceful. Since it couldn't affect him, there was no need to think too deeply about it. After pondering for a moment, he put the item away and looked down. Seeing West Fuzi still kneeling there, he nodded. This demonic bird was born with a kind and gentle temperament, and it could even fly through the void. If the junior disciples could become friends with it, they would be able to go to many places that they couldn't go, and cultivators with high cultivation wouldn't have to do everything for them. Love go small say netku, he said. West Fuzi, your people have been living in your own territory for a long time. Have you ever thought about communicating with the outside world? For example, my mountain and sea land is boundless and rich in spiritual opportunity. It's a good place to go, and it's better for your people to multiply. West Fuzi gathered up her courage and asked where the mountain and sea land was. She couldn't help but be tempted. Her Earth star was too remote, and it limited the number of people living there. Moreover, she gradually felt that she didn't have enough spiritual opportunity. Even with the red scorching Earth star, she could only absorb spiritual opportunity bit by bit. It would have been fine before she took human form, but after she became a human, the absorption of spiritual opportunity became even faster. That was quite embarrassing. The best way was to go to a place where spiritual opportunity flourished. However, she was also worried that if she came into contact with people from the outside world, she would expose her location, and her people would be enslaved and imprisoned. But if she didn't agree, would the person above her get angry and turn against her? Seeing that she was hesitating, Zhang Yan smiled and said, "This is up to you, I won't force you." West Fuzi lowered her head and thought for a long time. This celestial master even knew her return route so accurately. She was afraid that the location of her lair had already been exposed. It was a rare opportunity. If she missed it this time, she could only slowly die of old age in her lair. Thinking of this, she gritted her teeth and said, "I'm willing to go to the mountain and sea land." Zhang Yan smiled and flicked his finger. A divine light went into her eyebrows and said, "I've told you the location of the mountain and sea land. You can think about it when you go back or not." West Fuzi only felt that there was an additional star position chart in her mind. Before she could take a closer look, she felt her body lightened and found that she had landed in the void. The palace was nowhere to be seen, and she had no idea where it went. Only the red scorching Earth star was still not far away. She turned around and changed back to her original form, and flew back to where she came from. At this time, Zhang Yan was driving the palace back to the mountain and sea land. After half a year, he returned to the sect and explained everything to the sect leader before going into seclusion again. At this time, whether it was the mountain and sea realm, the Junqin realm, or the Hornflower realm, nothing major happened. Just like that, 100 years passed peacefully. In the Jade Pot realm of the Junqin realm, the Gong brothers had been imprisoned here for more than 100 years after they swore an oath. The agreed time had long passed, but for some reason, they would rather be trapped here than go out. Rao Jifeng thought that they were afraid of the cultivators of the 9 continents attacking them. He couldn't be sure about this, so he let them be. For him and the disciples of the Devil sect, there were only benefits. In the depths of the small realm, a huge dragon was lying down. Under its claws were 2 scarlet blood suns that shone incessantly. The Gong brothers, Gong Chang and Gong Shao, were sitting cross-legged under the dragon's claws. Their foundations were strong, and their auras were not much weaker than when they were imprisoned. Gong Chang suddenly grumbled and said, "Old Shao, how long are we going to stay in this damned place?" Gong Shao had a normal expression and said, "Be patient. I keep feeling that something is wrong. There is no danger or pain here, and at most, some insignificant vitality will be taken away. If we go out, we will definitely lose our lives." Gong Chang said, "You said this before, and I believed you last time. But does that Rao Jifeng really dare to go against the oath?" Gong Zhao's eyes were cold, and he said, "If he doesn't make a move, it doesn't mean that others won't. Originally, I wanted to go out and surrender to the 9 continents, but it might be them who want our lives. Now that they are covering the sky with one hand, as long as there is a possibility, we can't act rashly." Although they were trapped here, Rao Jifeng didn't hide what was happening outside from them. From his point of view, the 2 of them would go out sooner or later, and they would know what they should know, so there was no point in hiding it. Gong Chang said in annoyance, "Since you said it, we can't just stay here forever. Think of a way to avoid this disaster." Gong Xiao said, "If we are willing to swear that we will do whatever the 9 continents ask of us, we might be able to keep our bodies intact." Gong Chang, however, chuckled and said, "Another one." If he agreed to this, then he would have to serve others forever. He was one of the 3 high priests of the blue sky realm back then. How could he be willing to be under someone else? Moreover, this was not the most important thing. Once he did such a thing, there would be obstacles in his heart when he wanted to improve his cultivation in the future, and then he would not need to cultivate anymore. Gong Xiao said, "I have been thinking about who will come to make a move on us. Those cultivators of the 9 continents with profound cultivation are either sect leaders or hall masters. They are all people of high status, and they need to stay in their own realm, so they can't keep an eye on us all the time. It is very likely that the ones who will make a move will be the remaining few, and then we might have a chance." Gong Chang said carelessly, "Just say it. As long as we can escape, any method is fine. It's better than wasting our lives here. If the 2 of us didn't risk our lives to fight back then, how could we be here today?" Gong Xiao said, "Let's do it this way first. When Rao Jifeng comes to ask us when we are going to leave, we have the right to decline. If there are people watching us from outside, they will probably misunderstand that we are unwilling to leave, and will relax. At that time, we will leave immediately. It would be easy to escape from this place, but the key is that this person dared to make a move on us along the way, so we must be well prepared, so we can't rely on luck. As long as we leave this realm, one of us will defend with all his might, and the other will find a way to escape." Gong Chang glared and said, "Only one of us can leave. Is there no other way?" Gong Xiao said coldly, "If one is unwilling to surrender and only wants to escape, then this is the only way. Only one of us can leave, but the one who leaves may not be able to survive. It all depends on luck." How could Gong Chang not understand? The void was vast, and even if they left by breaking through the realm, they would not know where they could go, and the outcome might not be good, but it was still better than dying on the spot. He was very straightforward, and slapped his knee, saying, "All right, let's do it this way. Then who stays, who guards?" Gong Xiao looked at him and said, "It's hard to say now, let's see how the situation plays out." Chapter 1481. Genius 1 second. Remember, if you want to go. Shuanet provides you with wonderful novels to read. In the small kettle world, Bei Xiangtong looked at the direction where the giant dragon was lying and said, "The 2 of them still haven't come out?" A disciple behind him said respectfully, "I have inquired from Lord Rao's disciple. These 2 refuse to leave the boundary again and are willing to stay here." "Love go small say netku." Bei Xiangtong gently waved his hand. The disciple bowed and retreated. There was no expression on his face, but he was thinking about how to deal with these 2 people. Ji Hao had also thought that once one reached a certain level of cultivation, one would be able to sense anything that was related to one's own life and death. Especially since these 2 had been imprisoned for over 100 years, they should be even more sensitive to such things. Therefore, it was normal for them to hide and not come out. He had used the excuse of exchanging Dao techniques to stay here for many years, but he had to go back in the end. But who knew how long these 2 were going to hide? Since he couldn't wait for them, he would try to force them out. He gazed into the distance once more before retreating from the cliff. He found a child and asked, "Where is your grandmaster now?" The boy said, "Founder is tasting tea in the Xian bamboo garden." "Does Shangzhen have something to discuss with Founder? Do you want me to inform him?" Bei said to the boy, "There's no need, I'll go by myself. You can leave now." Waving the boy away, he rode the cloud and headed towards the south of the island. He flew all the way. The little pot world was filled with a warm breeze, the clear sky and white clouds, the mountains and rivers were painted blue, the lake in the distant sky was the color of smoke, the scenery was extremely beautiful, just looking at it made one feel comfortable. Not long after, he landed in a bamboo forest. There were elks leaping about, but when they saw him, they didn't hide. Instead, they stared at him curiously. Fortunately, he was walking here with a shadow clone. Otherwise, a being with no cultivation like this would not be able to reach him. The reason why the Junchen realm was called the Emperor was because he regarded himself as the supreme ruler, and all other living beings were his subjects. Without permission, no living beings were allowed to get close to him. However, after he merged with the mountain and sea realm, under the influence of Rao and Bei, most of the heavenly regions began to use the terms used by the sects of the 9 continents. Whether it was intentional or not, the original titles were no longer used. At this moment, Rao Jifeng was sitting on a large flat rock, and there was a small table before him. Below him was a small stream that flowed with a gurgling sound, and there were 2 boys brewing tea by his side. They seemed to be in a leisurely and contented state. When he saw the clouds coming over from the sky, he said with a smile, "Fellow Taoist, you've arrived. Please take a seat. With such a beautiful scenery, let's enjoy the tea first before discussing anything else." Bei Xiangtong nodded his head in approval and landed in front of him. He raised his cup and took a sip, saying, "The clear water can wash my body, but my heart is not here, how can I taste it?" Rao Jifeng glanced at him and said in surprise, "Fellow Taoist seems to be implying something. There's no harm in being frank. The friendship between our 2 sects cannot be compared to that of others." Bei Xiangtong said bluntly, "Fellow Taoist, what do you think of those 2 from the Gong clan?" Rao Jifeng pondered and said, "Fellow Taoist, are you talking about the matter of me keeping them here? I've thought about it before. They were afraid of being schemed against after leaving. Now that they're waiting here, my sect can borrow their vitality, and it's not against morality, so why wouldn't I do it?" Bei Xiangtong said, "If they don't leave, are they going to stay here forever?" Rao Jifeng smiled and said, "How could that be? For now, their losses are still small in 100 years, but after 1,000 years, they won't be able to hold on. If no one drives them away, they will leave on their own." Bei Xiangtong said, "So that's what fellow Taoist is planning. In my opinion, this is a little inappropriate." Rao Jifeng made an "oh" sound, but he wasn't displeased at all. Instead, he cupped his hands and asked, "Does fellow Taoist have a wise opinion? If it makes sense, I'll definitely listen to it." Bei Xiangtong said, "The 2 Gong clan brothers aren't just the old emperors of Yuliangism. Fellow Taoist, don't forget that they originally came from the mountain and sea realm. Even now, there are still their descendants in that realm, and they possess great power. They are allies of the 9 continents, and they have great potential. If you want to talk about their weakness, it would be that they don't have anyone with a cultivation like the Gong clan brothers." Speaking up to this point, he saw that Rao Jifeng was deep in thought, so he said meaningfully, "If these 2 go back alive, although the 9 continents won't say anything, they will definitely be dissatisfied with us. Since that's the case, why don't we nip it in the bud?" Rao Jifeng said resolutely, "Don't say that I've made an oath, even if I've never made one, I won't make things difficult for them." "Love go little say net, Chu," Bei Xiangtong said, "Fellow Taoist, you're worrying too much. I don't mean that. I just want you to banish them, and there's no need for them to stay here anymore. If the 9 continents really don't want them to stay, they will naturally take care of them." Rao Jifeng sighed and said, "But what difference does it make if it's earlier or later? Why do you have to rush it now?" Bei Xiangtong said, "Right now, the mountain and sea realm is expanding outwards, trying to find other realms, in order to guard against that almighty being who might come. Fellow Taoist, think about it, under such circumstances, how can you allow the internal situation to become unstable? Who knows what will happen in 1,000 years? If something really happens, you won't have to worry about it, but you have to think about your disciples, right?" Rao Jifeng frowned. The 9 continents didn't exclude the devil sect, and he could walk openly in the realms. He was very satisfied with this, but if he were to offend the other party because of his insistence, as Bei Xiangtong had said, he wouldn't have any problems, but his disciples would be affected. After pondering for a long time, he finally nodded and sighed, "After all, this goes against my conscience." Bei Xiangtong knew what he meant. If cultivators like them did something they didn't want to do, it could affect their cultivation. It was like a beautiful jade with a little flaw. But on the other hand, if they went through this test and wiped away the dust, they would usher in a new transformation. Rao Jifeng said in a low voice, I will discuss with them again. Next, I will use a magical treasure to absorb their vitality, and open the gate of 2 realms. If they can't bear it, they will leave, but I won't drive them away. I hope you can understand. The 2 of them were now bound together for good or bad. If he made the 9 continents unhappy, he would also implicate Bei Xiangtong, so he expressed his apology. Bei Xiangtong said, that's enough. Fellow Taoist has fulfilled his promise, and you've already protected them once. You've done your best. What happens next has nothing to do with fellow Taoist. Rao Jifeng said, perhaps so. He picked up the cup, took another sip, and sighed, it's a little bitter. Rao Jifeng chuckled and also took a sip. He said, it's bitter at first, then sweet, with a lingering aftertaste. This is a good cup of tea. A few days later, the 2 of them received a contract. It said that according to the previous agreement, the 2 of them could leave. But if they stayed, for the sake of the Jade Pot small world's safety, they would have to sacrifice more vitality, and if necessary, they would have to help Rao Jifeng and his disciples forge magical treasures. Gong Xiao said, Rao Jifeng is driving us away. There must be someone behind him pushing him to do this. Originally, I planned to wait for the enemy to lower their guard before leaving, but now it seems that I can't. Gong Chang said, can't we wait a little longer? Gong Xiao said, we can't wait any longer. If we don't sign this contract, then Rao Jifeng can openly drive us away. But if we sign it, he will have to absorb a large amount of vitality from us. In less than 100 years, our vitality will be greatly damaged, and we will lose the power to resist. At that time, we can only wait to be slaughtered. Gong Chang pondered, then we can only leave. If we are forced to leave like this, we won't have a good ending. Gong Xiao said, there is another way. It seems that Rao Jifeng isn't willing to do anything to us. Otherwise, he wouldn't have to resort to such tricks. We can negotiate with him. Who knows, we might leave within 100 years. I believe he will agree to it. Gong Chang touched his chin, and said, within 100 years, which means to find an opportunity to leave within this period of time. Gong Xiao said, that's right. We need to make preparations. When the time comes, we will leave. Rao Jifeng quickly learned of the request of the 2 of them. In all fairness, the condition was not excessive. He thought it over and felt that the condition of leaving within 100 years was acceptable, so he agreed and sent someone to inform Bei Xiangtong of the matter. After Bei Xiangtong learned about it, he smiled faintly and said, it's just a last-ditch struggle. The 2 of them could not cultivate for 100 years and could only have their vitality extracted by others. Although their strength did not deteriorate by much, all the instruments on them were confiscated. Rao Jifeng was not a person who purely kept his promise and did not know how to be flexible. He was also worried that the 2 of them would bear a grudge and seek revenge in the future, which would make him look foolish. Therefore, he was not prepared to return any of the items to them. In this way, the combat strength of the 2 was far from what it used to be, almost not even half of what it was at its peak. However, Bei Xiangtong was different. In order to deal with the 2 of his peers, he had made ample preparations for 100 years. The things that were passed down from Yuliangism, other than the part taken by Jiuzhou, were all in his possession. It could be said that even if the 2 of them were to wield a magic weapon, he had the same confidence to take it down. After waiting patiently for more than 10 years, 2 rays of light suddenly disappeared from the realm. He raised his head and looked in one direction, his eyes revealing a sneer. After the 2 Gong brothers secretly left the small kettle world, they did not split up. In the past, they could do so, but now that their strength was greatly reduced, this was only an opportunity for others to attack them separately. Half a month after they left, they suddenly saw a ray of clear light flying over, blocking their way. Then, a Taoist walked out from it, bowed and said, "Fellow Taoists, why are you in such a hurry, where are you going?" Gong Chang's eyes sharpened. He circulated his mana, his body overflowing with chi and blood. His whole person looked like a red sun, rushing towards the formation ahead, even the void seemed to have turned into a patch of blood red. He transmitted a message, "Old Shao, do as I said earlier. I will stop him, and don't forget to avenge me." As he spoke, he had already rushed up, appearing very decisive. Gong Shao did not hesitate. At this time, a slight delay could cause him to miss the opportunity. He immediately activated the chi on his body, and at the same time, activated the root fruit, trying to break open the door of 2 realms and fly away. Bei Xiangtong, on the other hand, was very confident. He had planned for such a long time, and all the reactions of the two were within his consideration. There would not be any mistakes. First, he took out a magic weapon to protect himself, then with a flick of his sleeve, a formation map flew out and came above Gong Shao in an instant. The door of 2 realms that was about to open was instantly stabilized. Chapter 1482. Genius 1 second. Remember love? Go. TalkNet, providing you with wonderful novels to read. What Bei Xiangtong had been paying the most attention to was how to prevent the 2 imperial emperors of the Gong clan from breaking into other realms, and this formation map was prepared for them. Back then, Kongying made it for the imperial emperors of the inner realms, but he never used it. They had no power and could not hurt the enemy, but they could disturb the flow of energy and lock down the space above you. Once you were above your head, you would not be able to get out in a short time. The only thing he had to be careful of was that the 2 of them would split up as soon as they got out of the Jade Pot small world. If that happened, he would have to stop them in advance, but that would make Rao Jifeng lose face. Fortunately, that didn't happen. In fact, this was reasonable, because the 2 Gong brothers could not have known that he was the only one coming, so they would not have dared to split up. Gong Chang came up and passed through Bei Xiangtong's body like a shadow. He knew that Bei Xiangtong had sacrificed his root fruit to escape, so he immediately began to calculate. However, neither he nor Gong Shao were Qi Dao cultivators, so being able to calculate the location of other people's root fruits was their weakness. Their strong point was that they could compete with others in terms of energy consumption, but the prerequisite was that they had powerful magical treasures and protective treasures. Now that they had neither of these, it was very dangerous. Over the years, Bei Xiangtong had carefully studied the fighting style of the 2 Gong brothers. Usually, when they encountered an equal opponent, the 2 of them would fight together. Usually, Gong Chang would fight head-on, while Gong Shao would look for opportunities outside. It had always been like this, and it had never changed for thousands of years. It was not that they did not want to change their fighting style, but that this way of fighting was the best for each person, and also the most difficult to deal with. Between the 2 of them, Gong Zhao's escape technique was better than Gong Chang's, so as long as he kept a close eye on the former, he would be able to keep the 2 of them here. Gong Chang and Gong Shao saw that they were about to leave, but they did not give up. They were going to deal with Bei Xiangtong and see if they could find an opportunity to escape. On the other side of the battlefield, before the 3 of them could make their move, Rao Jifeng received an imperial order from the Mountain and Sea Realm, requesting that he go to the Mountain and Sea Realm. Based on his calculations, it wasn't too long until the time to hand over the tribute, and to avoid having to travel back and forth, he decided to take it with him. He bid farewell to Bei Xiangtong's avatar in the inner realm and left with peace of mind. The battle between 3/3 step cultivators should have been earth-shattering, but Bei Xiangtong had done his homework. He chose to intercept them in the void so that the 2 from the Gong family wouldn't have a chance to kidnap the cultivators of the Junqin realm. He also used a treasure to hide the movement, so no one in the inner realm noticed the change here. The 3 of them fought fiercely in the void sky. Unknowingly, 2 years had passed. Bei Xiangtong was still calm and composed. He had the absolute advantage and was as steady as he could be. He used his instrument to block the ordinary attacks and his root fruit to evade the powerful attacks. Because he knew the origins of the 2 and their skills, he was not afraid that they would be able to calculate the location of his root fruit. If this went on, he would be able to exhaust them to death. He did not immediately take out a powerful move because he had his considerations. He was afraid that the two of them still had some powerful killing moves, so he did not want to push them too far. Once the two of them exhausted a bit more of their essence chi, he would not have the chance to make a move even if he wanted to. How could the two from the Gong family not see through such a setup? It was like there was a big net around them, and as the battle went on, the net gradually tightened. It was not that they did not want to break out of the net, but their opponent was too steady, and they could not find any chance. After another year of fighting, Gong Chang could not bear it anymore. He knew very well that after using the root fruit frequently, Bei Xiangtong would be able to find his root fruit in at most a month or so. Since that was the case, he might as well fight while he still had essence chi. He transmitted his voice, "Old Shao, looks like we can't escape. I don't care what you do, I'm not used to listening to orders." With that, regardless of Gong Chang's reaction, he let out a roar, and the red rainbow on his body became dozens of times hotter than before. Then, it shrouded everything in front of him. Bei Xiangtong's spirit was slightly lifted, and he also raised his vigilance. He understood that the opponent was ready to fight with his life. Looking at the boundless red light, he immediately knew that such a pure magic power attack could not be resisted by the magic treasure. However, he had the protection of the root fruit, so what if the scene looked good? But the next moment, he found that no matter where he went, the light always lingered, and his senses were also blocked, so he did not know what the situation outside was. This made him a little surprised, but after a little calculation, he immediately understood that he could get rid of it in 10 breaths' time, and during this time, Gong Shao could not escape far at all. But if the opponent used this method right from the start, and the other person tried to break the boundary and fly, there might be a possibility of success. This person did not do so, which meant that he did not have the intention to die at that time, otherwise, the ending would be different. After Gong Chang used this magical power, his whole body's essence chi was exhausted. He turned his head and saw that Gong Shao did not move, and he could not help but grin. This expression appeared just now, and his whole body turned into ashes, and at the place where he died, a black hole suddenly appeared, and then everything turned into nothingness. Bei Xiangtong waited for the red light to disperse, looked up, and saw that Gong Shao did not leave. He was slightly surprised, and said, "Just now is such a good opportunity, why don't you leave?" Gong Shao said calmly, "I can't leave." Bei Xiangtong said, "You are very clear." He circulated his mana and was about to make a move again, but at this time, Gong Shao suddenly looked up and said, "Wait, what if I surrender?" Bei Xiangtong's movement moved slightly, looked at him, and sighed, "If you were willing to submit earlier, there would still be a chance of survival, but now that I have already made my move, how can I stop? There must be an end to today's matter." Once he made his move, there would be enmity between the two sides. Even if Gong Shao surrendered, he would only submit to the 9 regions, and not to him. If this person could live safely this time, he was sure that in the future, he would definitely cause trouble for himself, and if he was unlucky, he might be killed by it, so there was no room for negotiation. Gong Shao was silent for a moment, and then said, "What a pity." Bei Xiangtong did not know what he was feeling pity for. Was he sighing at Gong Chang's indecisiveness just now, or was he lamenting himself? But there was no need for him to find out. Today, these two must die here, so he did not say anything more. He made a hand sign, and a huge spiritual tide surged out from the void, charging towards the other party. The two from the Gong clan were not Bei Xiangtong's match even if they worked together, and now, Gong Shao alone was even worse. 20 days later, as Xiao Zhenguo was found, he could no longer defend against the oncoming attacks, and his body was repeatedly pierced by the spiritual rainbows. After another 10 days, his vitality was finally exhausted, and he died. At this moment, not far from Void Sky, there was an undetectable clump of sea serpent gas floating, and Xue Dingyuan was standing inside, watching the changes of the battle silently. He had also left spies in Junchen realm, and this time, it was to prevent any accidents from happening in this battle. Because his movements were secretive, even Bei Xiangtong did not know that he was here. Seeing that the two from the Gong clan were dead, there was no need for him to stay any longer, and with a wave of his sleeve, he turned and left. The sun and moon were like jumping balls, and the wheel of time was like flying. 50 years passed in a hurry. In Xianyuan's small world, Zhang Yan's mana gradually accumulated to the peak of this realm, and because there was no longer the danger of Purple Clear's spiritual opportunity being cut off, he calculated that in another 20 to 30 years, he could attempt to cut off his past body and leap into the second stage realm. At that stage, his strength would increase greatly, and it was impossible to enter the third stage realm in a short period of time, but at that time, he could go to outer space to search for the strength path root fruit. The void world was extremely unstable, and he might encounter some unknown great enemy, and to deal with these dangers, he had to rely on his own strength. At this moment, there was a flash of spiritual light, and Mountain River Child appeared from the sky, standing there with his body bowed. Zhang Yan asked, "Is there anything outside?" Mountain River Child bowed to him and said, "Master, just now, Jing Langjun came to report that a white-feathered demon bird called Westfuzi came from the Earth Star outside the land, and said that Master directed her to come here, and she wants to see Master." Zhang Yan nodded. "It was me who called her here. Ask Jingyu to bring this demon to the main hall." Mountain River Child said yes, bowed and retreated. Zhang Yan, on the other hand, changed his mind, and a doppelganger left the small world and went outside. Westfuzi returned to the Earth Star, and along the way, she saw the solemn and grand atmosphere of Qinsang School, which was an eye-opener, and at the same time, she was shocked beyond words, especially when the spiritual opportunity flourished here, and it was unknown how many times more than the original Earth Star. If it was not for the concern of her tribe, she even wanted to stay here and not leave. Jingyu came out under Zhang Yan's order, and he led her to the main hall. As soon as she entered, she saw Zhang Yan sitting on the high platform, and she quickly bowed, "Greetings, Celestial Master." Zhang Yan smiled, "Rise, you really came. This time, did you come alone, or did you bring your tribesmen?" Westfuzi replied in a low voice, reporting to Celestial Master, "This time, I brought 10 of my tribesmen here to let them see the outside world, and if they do not follow the rules, I will send them back." Zhang Yan smiled and said, "There's no need for that. You can wander around the mountains, seas, and Earth's continents for a few days before deciding if you want to stay or not. However, you have to be careful of those places with fierce demons." He flicked his finger, and a spiritual light fell. "I will give you a travel talisman, and you can use it to travel between the array gates." Westfuzi took the spiritual light and said gratefully, "Thank you, Celestial Master." Jingyu walked up and chuckled, "Chief Westfuzi, please follow this little one, I will arrange a place for you and your tribesmen to stay." Westfuzi hurriedly thanked him and followed him down the stairs. Zhang Yan watched them leave, but his magic power clone did not go back, and he stayed in the main hall. With a wave of his hand, he took out the cultivation technique jade booklet that Junchen Realm had offered over the years and flipped it open. A month passed in the blink of an eye, and on this day, the two realms dial that had not moved for a long time on the table suddenly trembled. He raised his eyebrows, put down the jade booklet, and pressed his hand on it. Immediately, a spiritual light shot out, and a gloomy Taoist appeared. He said, "Taoist Sima, do you have something to report?" Sima Quan bowed to him, and his expression was very solemn as he said, "Taoist, there is a huge change in Jiaohua realm." Chapter 1483. Genius 1 second. Remember if you want to go. TalkNet, providing you with exciting novels to read. Sima Quan being so serious, Zhang Yan also realized that the problem this time was probably not small. He asked slowly, "Enlighten Sima, what happened in the Hornflower realm?" Sima Quan said, "Previously, Sima reported to the realm that the Hornflower upper realm, Yunshu realm, was invaded by evil monsters. Previously, I deliberately leaked this information. It was to find a friendly alliance and fight the great enemy together." Zhang Yan nodded and said, "I already know about this matter. It seems that this matter has something to do with these evil monsters." Sima Quan said, "Yes, evil monsters have invaded. The Yunshu realm is said to have dozens of lower realms, but in just a few years, more than 10 realms have fallen, and the Hornflower realm is one of them. Moreover, the Shengzhen of the Yunshu realm have been hiding the news. If I didn't leave a clone in the Hornflower realm when I came, I'm afraid it would be difficult for me to know about this. At this point, his voice became slightly heavy. Those evil monsters are more difficult to deal with than imagined, and Sima even saw a demon. Zhang Yan's eyes slightly narrowed. As expected, this matter was not small. Since there were demons, it was very likely that there would be existences like the Heavenly Demon and the Genin Demon. Among the various sects in the 9 continents, he had the most contact with the Heavenly Demon. People like Sima Quan maintained their own temperament. Moreover, he was first an elder of the Netherworld Spring sect, then a Heavenly Demon. In essence, he was still a Taoist cultivator. It was just that the cultivation method he chose was different from his peers. However, those demons that were born from the turbid air were different. Even if they possessed the body of a Taoist cultivator and obtained their experience and wisdom, they would never become like a human. Instead, they would become more dangerous. All good and evil, morality, and ethics were meaningless to them. Instead, they were tools that could be used. Sima Quan still had some restraint in his actions. Moreover, other people's wisdom and experience were poison to him. Other than the necessary parts, he rarely took the initiative to ask for it. However, pure heavenly demons did not have such scruples. If they wanted to, they could overturn a large sect with a heavenly abode in an extremely short time, not to mention there was an existence like the Genin Demon. Zhang Yan thought about it and asked, "What's the situation like now?" Sima Quan said, "Facing those evil monsters, the Yunshu realm's cultivators retreated step by step, and it was almost impossible for them to put up an effective resistance. It was even rumored that a Shangzhen with mortal metamorphosis cultivation had died in battle." Zhang Yan raised his eyebrows and said, "Did Taoist Sima inquire about this himself, or did he hear it from someone else?" Sima Quan said, "I heard it from someone else. However, after asking around, I feel that this matter is very likely to be true." Zhang Yan's eyes flickered slightly as he said, "If it's not a rumor, or cultivator Yunshu accidentally leaked it, then it must be these evil spirits. They can be said to have a deep understanding of people's hearts. However, to use such a method to shake the Yunshu realm, it means that the situation is not as dangerous as it looks." Sima Quan thought for a while and said in a deep voice, "Taoist Sima is saying that although the Yunshu realm is in a precarious situation this time, it's very likely that part of it is faked for us to see." Zhang Yan smiled faintly and said, "It's very likely." According to the news that Taoist Sima sent earlier, the battle between the people of the Yunshu realm and the evil spirits has not been going on for a day or two. They must have a certain method to deal with it. Previously, they deliberately leaked it because they found out that there were people from the outside world here. Maybe they found out about Taoist masters' whereabouts, or maybe there are other people besides our 9 continents there. They must want to find allies to join forces against the enemy. This time, the situation is even more dangerous, so I'm afraid this idea is even more urgent." Sima Quan said, "However, if a mortal metamorphosis cultivator was really killed, then I'm afraid the loss will not be light." Zhang Yan said, "Do you know the specific details?" Sima Quan said, "It's hard to know the details. I can only speculate based on some scattered clues. This person seemed to be looking for an opportunity to kill a big evil spirit, but didn't realize it was a trap. Later, he fell into a siege and died of exhaustion." Zhang Yan thought for a while and said, "A mortal metamorphosis cultivator is very difficult to kill and can't be defeated in a short time. From the looks of it, he should be fighting with the enemy in his own realm, so his fellow Taoists will not sit by and do nothing. In my opinion, the one that was lost should be a more important clone. But in this case, it can be said to be a big loss, but it's not fatal." After a pause, he asked again, "About those evil spirits, does Taoist Sima know anything?" Sima Quan replied, "That clone of mine was swallowed by a demon. But when I took a quick glance, I saw something that looked like a swanee and heard a few words. These evil spirits live by devouring spiritual opportunity, and even the flesh and blood of Taoists are their favorite. Some of them are not afraid of supernatural powers and spells, so they are extremely difficult to deal with. But whether or not it is the same as the rumors, we still need to investigate. Zhang Yan said, I will explain this matter to everyone. Taoist Sima, continue to pay attention to the inner realm, and I will contact you when I have results. Sima Quan bowed and said, Sima understands. Zhang Yan withdrew his mana, and the spiritual light on the dual realm dial faded again. His body gradually disappeared, and the mana clone returned to his original body. When he came out of his meditation, he exited the small world and headed towards the main hall of the floating heavenly palace. He went to the door and reported his arrival. When a servant came to summon him, he entered the main hall. Seeing that sect leader Qin was already seated in the main hall, he went forward and greeted him. After exchanging a few words of greeting, he sat down at the banquet table and told sect leader Qin the news that Sima Quan had sent. The two of them discussed for a while, then sect leader Qin said, this matter should be discussed with everyone. Then he summoned the other mortal metamorphosis cultivators. Zhang Yan also released his divine will, and in a flash, he arrived in the unknown space. Sect leader Qin and Meng Zhen arrived together, and after a while, Yu Xianxiao, Ying Chuanqiu, and Shui Dingyuan also appeared one after another. After everyone had greeted each other, Zhang Yan repeated what he had just told Sect Master Qin and said, there are two main things. One is that the Yunshu realm occupies a lot of space, and one of them is the Jiaohua realm that I want to take back. Now this realm is in the hands of those evil monsters. The second thing is that the people of the Yunshu realm seem to have the intention to find allies to fight against the evil monsters together. Previously, it had nothing to do with us, but now it has something to do with us. Whether we should intervene or not, we still need to discuss it. Hearing this, everyone began to ponder. They could all see that when they wanted to take back the Jiahua realm, there would be conflict with the Yunshu realm. However, now that it was invaded by the evil monsters, the situation had changed, especially when they urgently needed help. If they asked to take back the realm, then there was a high chance they could take it back. They could even try to propose some other conditions. Of course, the premise was that these evil monsters could be dealt with and they couldn't be trapped. Meng Zhen bowed to sect leader Qin and then said, looking at it now, it does seem to be an opportunity. However, in the past, we planned to wait until I became stronger before plotting. Right now, less than 200 years have passed, and our strength hasn't grown much. If we intervene now, I'm afraid it's not appropriate. Most of the enlightened beings present agreed. Before doing anything, one must first consider one's own ability. This was especially true when it involved the disciples of the various sects and the billions of lives in the inner realm. Of course, they had to be cautious. Shui Dingyuan said, even if the people of the Yunshu realm can't hold on and the Jiahua realm is lost, when I become strong in the future, I can take it back. Yu Xianxiao didn't like the way the people of the Yunshu realm acted. If they wanted to ask for help, then they should openly say it. Now that they were being secretive and hesitant, it was very pretentious. However, he still had the intention to advance. He raised his voice and said, although this matter has nothing to do with me, who can guarantee a certain level of peace among the realms? These evil monsters have found their way to the Yunshu realm now, and they might come to the mountain and sea realm in the future. We have to find out who they are. If we can't defeat them, then we'll wait and see. If we can deal with them, then we'll use our swords to kill them. Zhang Yan said, whether we fight or not, we have to find out who they are. It's not convenient for us to send people, so it seems that this matter will fall on enlightened being Sima. He turned to sect leader Qin and said, disciple suggests that although we can't meet them, if necessary, we can ask enlightened being Sima to reveal our existence to them. This will strengthen their morale and make it easier to negotiate in the future. Sect leader Qin said, Hall Master Du Zhen, this is a good idea. Everyone discussed for a while more. They all felt that it was necessary to find out how long the people of the Yunshu realm could last and how the strength of the two sides was. This was related to what they would do in the future. Zhang Yan said, if we look at the big picture, the Yunshu realm can divide the spiritual opportunity and take a lot of the spiritual opportunity from the lower realms to fill their own realm, making it prosperous for a while. But on the other hand, without the many lower realms, this good situation can't be maintained. The small realms that were lost before should be unimportant. Perhaps there will be some damage, but it won't be too difficult. If those evil monsters stop here, then the situation will be balanced. If they lose all the lower realms, then it will be a real crisis. In fact, no matter what, as long as the mortal molting cultivators were still there, the Yunshu realm could still hold on for a long time. Especially if their own realm was not lost, their foundation was still there, and they were still far from being at the end of the line. After a long discussion, they decided to observe the situation for a while and wait for the situation to change before discussing further. After a few more words, they all withdrew. Just as Zhang Yan was about to leave, he saw Xue Dingyuan nod his head to him. He pondered for a moment and decided to stay. After everyone left, Xue Dingyuan bowed to him and said, "I heard Jinren Zhang said that there are extraterrestrial demons among those evil monsters." I suddenly remembered something. In the abyss, some strange things have been found in recent years. They can mix with the demons, and sometimes they can even order the demons to do things. I was thinking, could those evil monsters be similar to them? Zhang Yan's heart moved, and he said seriously, "Where are these things?" Xue Dingyuan shook his head and said, "These things are weak and few in number. So far, I have only seen about 10 of them, and their lifespans are short. It's only a cycle of spring and autumn, so I didn't pay much attention to them. If we search carefully in the depths of the abyss, we might be able to find them." Zhang Yan pondered. There were evil monsters in the Yunshu realm, and there were also strange things here. It would be fine if the two were not related, but if they were, then it would be very troublesome. He said, "Those that can be related to the demons should not be underestimated. Leader Xue, when is it convenient, I will personally go to the abyss to investigate."